Chapter 627. Yu Xiu finally leaned on the bed and cried bitterly. It is said that a woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the sea. But how many people in the world can understand a man's heart? Especially a man like Dong Wu Lei. His personality was contradictory and extreme. Who could understand him? Beating a woman didn't seem like a real man's behavior. But a real man would disregard everything for his brother. Dong Wu Lei whipped his horse and galloped wildly. He was burning with anxiety. A road led straight to the end of the world. He was galloping alone on his horse. His destination was the Broken Soul Cliff. Wu Shong, you must walk slowly. You must wait for me. Dong Wu Shong had only been intercepted by Ao Meng Yun of the Ao clan along the way. Dong Wu Shong had forcefully rushed past them. He had a rough appearance, but he had the overall situation in his heart. He knew that this wasn't the time to fight to the death with the Ao clan. Therefore, he hadn't killed anyone. He had only relied on the black saber's sharpness and weight to open a path for himself. Then, he had swaggered away. He had gone straight for 3,000 miles. And he hadn't been intercepted a second time. Dong Wu Shong muttered to himself because of this tranquility. How can it be so tranquil? Could it be that no one has noticed me? He looked at the familiar scenery in front of him. He was getting closer and closer to the territory of the Dong clan. The Broken Soul Cliff would be 300 miles ahead. He was less than 1,000 miles away from his home. Dong Wu Shong hesitated and stopped his footsteps. Then, he made a draft in his heart. This would be his last and most sincere effort to win back his elder brother. Big brother, I will withdraw from the clan. I will still be a member of the Dong clan. But I won't participate in any clan disputes. I've come back today to help the clan get through this difficult time. But I will ask my father to resign after this. I will accompany my big brother from now on. And we will rush to the heavens. I will leave the Dong clan to you, big brother. But I will rush back as soon as the clan needs me. And I will fight for our clan to the end. Dong Wu Shong shook his head. It seems a little stiff. But how should I say this? The gap between us brothers has become bigger and bigger these years. Big brother's loyal subordinates look at me as if they are looking at an enemy. Big brother, you don't know how much I miss the days when we brothers were as close as one. I want to return to those days. Dong Wushang looked ahead worriedly. At this moment, he longed to go home, but he was also afraid of going home. Home was so warm, yet so far away. After resting for a while, Dong Wushang set off again. This time, he did not hesitate. The Broken Soul Cliff was up ahead. The Dong clan's territory would be beyond the Broken Soul Cliff. And the Broken Soul Cliff was the best place for an ambush. Only a few people could walk side by side through the dense forest on both sides of the road. Dong Wushang knew that if someone wanted to deal with him, they would definitely be there. It might be the Ou clan's alliance, or it might be the Ao clan, or it might be my own clan. However, he strode forward like a shooting star without the slightest hesitation. I've already hesitated and considered it. But now, no matter what lies ahead, I have to go through it. Regardless of whether it was a mountain of blades, a sea of flames, or a broken heart, he had to face what he had to face. Dong Wushang strode forward, but he was unconsciously biting his lips. The distance of 300 miles was gradually left behind by him. Dong Wushang was startled when he turned around the foot of the mountain. At the foot of the Breaking Soul Cliff in front, there was a person standing upright. Behind him, there were dozens of people sitting and waiting. When they saw Dong Wushang's return, they immediately stood up. Second young master is back. Dong Wushang felt somewhat relieved. They were all Dong clan's people. Most of them were Big Brother's people. But the second senior elder was also among them. He doesn't like me, but he won't be so despicable with his status, right? Moreover, these people are smiling. The second senior elder's face is still ice cold. But he has always been like this. So, it's not a big deal. The only strange thing is, why are they here? Have they come to greet me? Dong Wushang suddenly felt excited as he looked at the smiling faces in front of him. He quickly walked forward. Second Senior Elder, you've had a hard journey. A first-grade Emperor-level expert welcomed him with a cheerful smile. The situation in the Three Heavens is dangerous now. We have to be on guard. And we know that the Black Devil wants to ambush you. You've just been intercepted by the AO clan. So, we've calculated the time and waited here. He smiled. This broken soul cliff is a natural place for ambushes. We have to be on guard. Dong Wushang suddenly felt relieved. So, that's how it is. He had a forthright and generous personality. So, he immediately smiled and said, "This is nothing. I can't thank you enough. Oh, by the way, Big Brother didn't come. The Grand Duke is preparing a banquet and decorating the courtyard in the clan. He's welcoming the return of the second senior elder." That Emperor-level expert had an embarrassed look on his face. He said in a low voice, "To be honest, the Grand Duke was very angry. He was a little, ha ha ha. In fact, even people like us were very upset. Second senior elder, please don't blame us." Cough cough. But then, the Grand Duke said, "After all, you're my younger brother. So, he asked us to come and greet you." At this point, Dong Wushang was completely at ease. For him to be able to say these words, it could be considered as him being frank and sincere. It seems that Big Brother has really thought it through. He couldn't help but sigh. Alas, it's not easy for Big Brother. That Emperor-level expert walked over with Dong Wushang in his arms. He then said, "Second young master, you must be careful. The second senior elder has come forward to greet you. Well, you know his temper." Cough cough. Of course. Dong Wushang laughed out loud and walked forward. He then slowly walked into the crowd. The Dong clan had 3 senior elders. The senior elder in front of him was the second one. His name was Du Liu Feng. He was nearly 100 years old. A strange look flashed through Du Liu Feng's eyes when he saw Dong Wushang walking over. He then insipidly said, "Second young master, I've heard that your cultivation has reached first-grade Saber Emperor." Everyone seemed somewhat nervous when they heard this question. They pricked up their ears and opened their eyes wide as they looked at Dong Wushang. "Yes. I was lucky enough to break through to first-grade Saber Emperor." Dong Wushang smiled modestly and said, "I've made second elder laugh." Du Liu Feng looked at Dong Wushang with a strange look in his eyes. He then said, "Second young master, you're 10 years old this year, right?" Dong Wushang rubbed his head and replied with a smile, 10.5 years old. "I'll be 20 years old in half a year." Du Liu Feng let out a long "oh" sound. Then, he said, "Was the journey peaceful?" Dong Wushang smiled contemptuously and said, "There were only a few jumping clowns. They weren't worth mentioning." Jumping clowns? Du Liu Feng's eyebrows twitched. He reluctantly pulled out a smile and said, "Second young master has grown up. Let's go. Everyone in the clan is anxiously waiting for us." Du Liu Feng smiled. Then, he resumed his expressionless face. Dong Wushang smiled and walked into the crowd. People from all directions also surrounded him with smiles on their faces, surrounding him in the middle. Du Liu Feng tightly wrinkled his brows. He then turned around and silently walked forward. One would have seen his complexion in a very complicated manner if they had seen him from the front. His eyes were full of contradictions. 10.5 years old Emperor-level expert. Saber Emperor. What kind of potential did he have? How could an old man like him, who had climbed to the 8th grade of Emperor-level expert in over 100 years old, not understand? However, he couldn't consider this at the moment. Jianghu was in chaos right now. The Dong clan couldn't withstand a civil war. The Dong clan would have likely been destroyed in this great tide of Jianghu if these two brothers were to fight at this time. Dong Wushang wouldn't have a choice even if he didn't fight for it. That was because the eldest brother and the third brother had already made up their minds to push Dong Wushang onto the throne of the clan lord. Wasn't the Mo clan's Mo Tianyun and Mo Tianji brothers a good example? The Mo clan's strength had dropped by almost half after the last fratricide between the two brothers. The Mo clan wasn't as big as the Dong clan. But, the ancestors of the Mo clan weren't weak either. But, how could the prosperity of the clan be entrusted to a single person? Good martial arts and high cultivation aren't necessarily qualified to be the clan lord, right? Du Liu Feng had quarreled with the eldest brother and the third brother more than 100 times on this point. But they were obstinate in their own ways. Therefore, he had no choice but to personally take action today. However, he hesitated at the last moment. Do I really have to kill a young expert with boundless future prospects? This would have been a great loss to the clan. In fact, it could have been our hope to rush to the upper three heavens in the future. Du Liu Feng's face was calm and collected. He frowned as he silently hurried on ahead. Senior Elder, an Emperor-level expert, anxiously called out. It seemed as if he was reminding or urging him. He was obviously anxious when he saw that Du Liu Feng was somewhat hesitant. Forget it. Du Liu Feng sighed in his heart. He suddenly stopped, and coldly shouted, "Attack!" The 8 people who were closest to Dong Wushong immediately attacked as soon as he gave the order. Dong Wushong was walking in the middle of the group. He was in the middle of the 40 to 50 people. He was happily walking forward with the group of the clan when he suddenly felt a burst of palpitations. It seemed as if a great crisis had suddenly struck his body. He couldn't help but subconsciously twist his body. And a sharp pain spread from every part of his body at the same time. The 8 people who were too close to Dong Wushong heard the order. But they didn't have enough time to draw their swords. Moreover, swords and sabers would make a sound. So, they simply used their fists and feet. And all of them heavily hit Dong Wushong's body at the same time. They hit his back, legs, waist, chest, nape, lower abdomen, dantian, and his temples. Dong Wushong was caught off guard. He suddenly suffered a fatal attack. He angrily screamed. His tall and sturdy body was sent flying like a huge gunny sack. Cracking sounds echoed in midair. It was unknown how many bones in his body had been broken. He was bleeding from his 7 orifices. His vision was almost blurred. He only felt that every part of his body was in heart-wrenching pain. Dong Wushong's body fell to the ground with a puff sound. And a splendid blood splashed on the ground. However, he angrily turned over and jumped up. He felt that his right leg had gone soft when he fell to the ground. And he nearly fell down. He hastily used his left leg to support his body. Only then did he realize that his right leg had been broken. His right arm, which he had used to wield the saber, hung down softly. His shoulder had been shattered. 8 experts had attacked Dong Wushong at the same time. He had been caught off guard, and had sustained injuries. He didn't have the slightest ability to counterattack. In fact, he didn't even have the ability to escape. Dong Wushong's entire body was madly gushing with blood. His eyes were bleeding as he looked at these people in front of him. His eyes were filled with sorrow. He muttered, "So, it's still like this. Big brother, has he really attacked me? Has he really attacked me?" Blood continuously gushed out of his mouth as he spoke. Dong Wushong could clearly feel that his heart was splitting into pieces. Compared to the pain on his body, the pain in his heart was 10,000 times worse. Chapter 628. Dong Wushong wasn't unguarded. He had always been on guard. However, he hadn't been on guard when things had come to a head. He had been caught completely off guard. That was because his elder brother's people had shown good intentions. So, he had let down his guard. Moreover, he had deliberately let himself let down his guard. No one knew how much Dong Wushong valued this brotherly affection. He had grown up together with his elder brother. He had always respected and worshipped him. He had always taken care of him in every possible way. He had spoiled him in every possible way. But he had turned against him. So, one could well imagine how sad and disappointed he was. Now, his elder brother had finally shown signs of reconciliation. He had shown good intentions. Dong Wushong would rather believe that this was true. He had longed to return to the environment of brotherly love. So, he hadn't hesitated to gamble with his own safety. Unfortunately, he had lost the gamble. His body was injured in many places. Someone else wouldn't have been able to stand up if they had been in his place. But he was still standing. He was standing on one leg. His entire body was bleeding profusely. But he was still standing straight. He was still mighty and majestic. Only the sadness and disappointment in his eyes had added a bit of desolate elegance to his proud figure. Everyone didn't dare to meet his gaze. So, they turned their heads away one after another. Dong Wushang smiled. It was a miserable smile. His heart had completely died at this point. He suddenly recalled that Chu Yang had repeatedly told him before he had left, "Wushang, you must be careful. Wushang, you must be careful." Big Brother had expected this. So, he had been reminding him. But, he hadn't said it clearly. That's because he couldn't say it clearly. After all, Dongwu Lei was his elder brother. His biological elder brother. It would have been hard to avoid sowing dissension if Big Brother had said it at that time. But, his repeated reminders were tantamount to saying, "Be careful of your elder brother." Dong Wushang had also sensed it. But, he had still foolishly chosen to believe it when things had come to a head. "Second Master, we also didn't want to do this." Du Liu Feng coughed twice. He then said somewhat guiltily, "But, our Dawn clan is swaying in the wind and rain at this time. We can't withstand another big storm." "I understand." Dong Wushang nodded slowly. The look in his eyes changed from confusion and despair to heartache and pain. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. But if one were to look closely at his eyes, one would be shocked to discover that his gaze was gradually deepening, gradually condensing, and gradually transforming into a kind of cruelty. He understood. He really understood. The Dawn clan only needed one successor. Just like the throne of the royal family, there would always be only one seat. If Dong Wushang was a little mediocre, it wouldn't be a big deal. But to be so outstanding, it was unnecessary. Moreover, it was a potential crisis that could lead to the division of the family. Dong Wushang's body swayed, and his eyes suddenly turned into the color of the black saber. He looked up at the sky and murmured, "Everyone in the world pursues love, but who would have thought that this world is heartless? Perhaps it's because this world is filled with too much ruthlessness that there are so many legends about love." Suddenly, a burst of intense saber light shot out from his body. Brilliant and dazzling. Enlightenment. The second senior elder looked at each other in amazement. He clearly understood what had happened to Dong Wushang at this moment with his cultivation and insight. He hadn't expected that Dong Wushang's innate talent would be so unimaginable. His mind had been stimulated in such a desperate situation, but he had still managed to gain enlightenment at such a time. How can a saber strike without causing any injury be considered high? Who can endure the endless world of mortals? Drifting in the Jianghu, I'll become a heartless saber from now on. Dong Wushang looked up to the sky and laughed heartily. He laughed out loud because of the endless grief and indignation in his heart. Suddenly, he let out a long and loud shout, and slowly recited these lines of a poem. Perhaps, this wasn't a poem, but a saber art. A saber art that belonged exclusively to Dong Wushang. Dong Wushang had suddenly become a Buddha when his body and mind had been beaten black and blue. He had comprehended the second level of the Saber Emperor realm. His entire body was emitting intense saber energy. The look in his eyes was becoming increasingly cruel, increasingly calm, and increasingly heartless. Dong Wushang had comprehended the saber without injury when he was a first-grade saber emperor. But his second-grade saber emperor had comprehended the saber without injury. Saber strikes without causing any injury from now on. Saber strikes without emotion. His body issued pi-pi-pa-pa sounds. The broken bones in his chest suddenly recovered miraculously. He stretched out his left hand, and suddenly turned his body. Then, his right shoulder shook, and a catcher sound resounded. Dong Wushang slowly raised his right hand, and slightly extended it. His shoulder recovered. His right foot fiercely stomped on the ground, and issued an earth-shaking loud sound. Dust and smoke flew in all directions like an explosion of explosives. His right leg recovered. His comprehensive comprehension of the second-grade Saber Emperor realm had miraculously healed all the injuries on his body to perfection at this moment. His injuries hadn't fully recovered, and his present strength wasn't at its peak. But his movements were no longer hindered. No one would have been able to stop him if he had retreated at this time, including Du Liu Feng, but he didn't want to retreat. He wanted to kill. The cloth that had bound his hair suddenly exploded with a bang sound. His black hair fluttered down and draped over his shoulders. Dong Wushang's body was tall and sturdy. He stood tall and straight. Everyone in front of him had all kinds of feelings at this moment. The Dong Wushang in front of them wasn't Dong Wushang anymore. He was a devil god from the ancient abyss. He was looking at them with disdain. Dong Wushang's eyes were cold and emotionless as he looked at these people in front of him. He had once placed all his hopes and trust in them. Then, he slowly raised his right hand. His movement was as slow as an ox climbing a hill. But it left behind a clear afterimage. Everyone clearly saw that his right hand was raised to the air. It was raised to the level of his shoulder. It was raised to the point where it was raised to the point where it was leaning backwards. Then, his right hand grabbed the hilt of the saber. It was the hilt of the black saber that had remained silent on his shoulder all this time. The afterimage he had left behind in front of him was still clearly visible when his right hand had grabbed the hilt of the saber. It had displayed a clear hierarchy and a clear sequence. The moment his right hand gripped the hilt of his blade, the 50 people in front of him felt their minds shake violently. It was as if the boundless sunny weather had suddenly turned dark. And a world-shaking thunderbolt flashed across the sky at the same time that it had turned dark. And it had smashed the darkness that had filled the entire sky. "You're heartless." "So, I'm heartless," Dong Wushang bellowed. Then, he suddenly unsheathed his black saber. An earth-shattering black light shot out. The afterimage he had left behind when he had unsheathed his saber was still in front of his chest. This saber had first smashed the afterimage in front of his body. Then, it had also smashed the air in front of his body. Then, it had streaked across the distance of 80 feet. And the saber's edge had been aimed at Du Liu Feng's forehead. His body had also arrived in front of Du Liu Feng when he had hacked down with his saber. However, Dong Wushang was still standing 80 feet away. His entire body was drenched in blood. His stature was tall and straight. He was like a deep pool of water and a mountain peak. One man could hold the pass against 10,000 men. At this moment, it was as if there were two Dong Wushang that were exactly the same in this world. One was still, and the other was moving. The still one was standing, and the moving one was killing people. Du Liu Feng bellowed. He unleashed the highest strength of an 8th grade emperor-level expert in a flash. He didn't advance. Instead, he retreated 300 feet like a whirlwind. Dong Wushang's saber missed its target. And a deep mark appeared on the ground with a bang. It was only 1 foot wide. However, it was 100 feet deep. And it was a full 25 feet long. The might of this saber strike was so terrifying. "Let's attack together. Kill him," Du Liu Feng shouted in a sharp voice. A thin bloodstain had appeared on his forehead. And blood was gushing out of it uncontrollably. Dong Wushang hadn't hacked down with his saber. However, the saber energy of the saber emperor had injured him. His entire body would have been split into 2 halves if it had been a little bit heavier. Du Liu Feng used his hand to touch his wound. However, his pure energy couldn't stop the bleeding. 45 people of the Dong clan crazily pounced on Du Liu Feng after Du Liu Feng had bellowed. Everyone had unsheathed their sabers and swords. And they were seething with murderous aura. Everyone knew that they would be dead if Dong Wushang didn't die today. After all, this matter had to be carried out in secret. And the clan's punishment would be enough to make everyone lose their lives if it was exposed. Dong Wushang swept his saber across. He then laughed wildly and said, "Heartless saber technique." Suddenly, the saber light became dazzling. That pitch-black black saber in his hand strangely emitted a multicolored saber light. The saber light swept across like lightning. Blood-curdling screams resounded repeatedly. The bodies of 7 people had been split into 2 halves. The smell of blood on the battlefield suddenly filled the air. And the atmosphere had become even more tragic. Dong Wushang laughed wildly. He then took large strides forward to attack. His body seemed like a moving lofty mountain range. He was so majestic that he seemed unexcelled in the world. A light swoosh sound was heard. Then, a shadow appeared above his head. Du Liu Feng had leapt down from the sky. The sword in his hand was emitting a sharp sword light. He then thrust it towards Dong Wushang's head. Dong Wushang fiercely lifted his black saber. And, it issued a whoosh tilde tilde sound as he brandished it. Then, a pitch-black saber curtain appeared from the ground to the sky. It had condensed into substance. Clang. A loud sound was heard. Du Liu Feng's body soared into the sky like a bird. But, he then fiercely somersaulted a few times in the air. Then, he staggered and fell to the ground. Only the hilt of his sword remained. The webbing between his thumb and index finger had been ruptured, and was dripping with blood. However, Dong Wushang's body also tilted. He staggered back a dozen or so steps. He left a deep footprint with each step he took. And, he stepped on the ground, and raised the dust in the sky. This kind of momentum didn't seem like a fight between two people. Instead, it seemed like two elephants had fiercely collided with each other at the highest speed. Moreover, the location was in one of the most dust-prone desert. Dong Wushang had relied on the strength of a second-grade saber emperor and the weight of his black saber to meet Du Liu Feng's attack head-on. So, it seemed that the outcome of the fight had been evenly decided. In fact, Du Liu Feng had fallen into a disadvantageous position. However, Dong Wushang's injuries were more serious in reality. He was a saber emperor who was far superior to an ordinary emperor-level expert. However, his strength was inferior in the face of the all-out attack of an 8th-grade emperor-level expert. Dong Wushang would have died on the spot if the black saber hadn't neutralized most of the enemy's power in fact, and posed a serious threat to the enemy. Attack immediately. His injuries haven't healed yet. Now, his injuries have worsened. He doesn't have much fighting strength left. Du Liu Feng gnashed his teeth, and shouted. First update. I'm heaty. A circle of blisters has formed on my tongue. It hurts to smoke a cigarette. I'm posting this chapter. I'm going out to get some medicine. Then, I'm coming back to write. Today, I'm proud of the world. I'm asking everyone for clicks, recommendation votes, monthly votes, and evaluation vote. This second promotion is of great significance. I ask my brothers and sisters to lend me a helping hand. Let's show off our strength in all aspects. We'll show our proud strength in this promotion. Mobile monthly votes have also fallen very badly. My brothers and sisters who read on mobile phones, please put in some effort, okay? Thank you. I'm asking for monthly votes from now on. And, I'm also asking for mobile readers, hehe. Chapter 629. Du Liu Feng felt even worse. Not only had the weapon that had accompanied him for his entire life been destroyed, but even his internal organs had also been turned over. The merciless saber energy was wreaking havoc in his meridians. He simply couldn't free his hands to attack again. He just stood there stiffly, and tried his best to dissolve the saber energy in his meridians. He didn't dare to move. Du Liu Feng's heart shivered. I hadn't thought that the might of a saber emperor would be this strong. I had thought that he would only be a second-grade saber emperor even if he had made a breakthrough. And, I was an 8th-grade emperor-level expert. So, it wouldn't be a problem to crush him to death. But, I hadn't expected that this move would be so sharp that both sides would suffer. He suddenly recalled a legend he had heard before: an emperor-level expert isn't frightening. What's frightening is a single emperor-level expert, saber emperor and sword emperor. The hegemony of a saber emperor and the sharpness of a sword emperor could kill enemies above their level as if they were cutting grass. Sure enough. The murderous intention in his heart became even more intense as he thought of this. How can I survive if I let Dong Wushang grow up? He has just made a breakthrough to second-grade saber emperor. Moreover, he is seriously injured. But, he still possesses such power. What will happen if he recovers to his peak state? What if he becomes a third-grade saber emperor? What will happen? I must make Dong Wushang fall here today at all cost. Du Liu Feng secretly swore in his heart. Humans are so strange. He had come to intercept and kill Dong Wushang earlier for the sake of the Wei clan. Moreover, he couldn't bear to kill Dong Wushang. How rare is it for a youngster to be so successful? But when he discovered that Dong Wushang actually had the ability to kill him, he didn't have the slightest bit of that lofty demeanor of an expert. This appreciation of talent and his reluctance to do so had all turned into boundless killing intent. This murderous intention had nothing to do with the future of the Dong clan. It was because his own life had been threatened. Perhaps, Du Liu Feng was loyal to the Dong clan. But the dark side of a person's heart couldn't be matched by any kind of loyalty. Dong Wushang spouted blood from his nose and mouth again. His 5 viscera had been severely shaken during the sneak attack. And his injuries had worsened after he had clashed with Du Liu Feng at this moment. However, Dong Wushang didn't stop. He didn't hesitate. The only thought in his mind at this moment was to kill these people. They are members of the Dong clan, but I just want to kill him, because I've already broken your heart. I respected you in every way and left you some leeway. Why do you still want to kill me? I've always tolerated you, and I've worshipped you since I was a child. Why do you still want to kill me? Do you know that I once swore in my heart that if you were in danger, I would risk my life to help you? Do you know that if it was a matter of life and death and only one of us could survive, I would definitely choose you to live? And I will die myself. Big brother, do you know? Do you know how badly you've hurt me this time? If you want me to leave the family, you only need to say the word. As long as you say it, I will leave obediently. I won't fight with you. But why didn't you even say a single word before taking action? Dong Wushang Xin roared. His eyes had turned red. He had almost lost his mind. Facing the 50 experts who were rushing towards him, he let out a sorrowful laugh and charged forward with his saber in hand. Her long black hair fluttered in the air. Kill! Dong Wushang roared. He leaped up abruptly and slashed down with his saber. A king-level expert was cut into 2 halves by his saber, and blood splashed out. The black saber was brandished horizontally, and a king-level expert's sword shattered with a clang sound. Then, his hand shattered, his arm shattered, his shoulder shattered, and his head shattered. He was smashed into pieces by the black saber's back. Dong Wushang laughed wildly as he rushed into the crowd. He looked like a crazed tiger that had rushed into a flock of sheep. He only attacked without defending in the face of 50 people. His former comrades, who were now his enemies, fell down one by one in front of him. New wounds were constantly appearing on his body, and blood was unceasingly flowing out. However, it seemed as if he didn't feel anything. He was still shouting and fighting bravely. There wasn't the slightest bit of pity in his eyes. The kindness and pureness in his eyes had turned into indifference and ruthlessness. He didn't even bother to deal with the injuries on his body. He was only venting the sorrow in his heart to his heart's content. The black saber was blocked with a loud clang sound. Sparks flew in all directions. Dong Wushang was panting for breath. He raised his blood-red eyes and looked at the scene. He saw that there were only a dozen or so people left in front of him. And all of them were looking at him in horror. The one who had blocked his saber was the Emperor-level expert who had spoken to him earlier. He turned his head to look, and saw that there were 50 corpses lying on the ground. They were badly mutilated. And there was a blood-stained road behind him. He was nearly 1,000 feet away from the cliff. The Emperor-level experts on the opposite side were scared witless. They felt as if they were in a dream. Moreover, it was a nightmare. 50 experts had been suppressed by him alone, and had been forced to retreat 1,000 feet. They had been retreating while people had been dying. But the other party hadn't relaxed at all. He had been charging and killing his way through. He had finally taken advantage of the opportunity when the other party had almost exhausted his strength to block the black saber. But he had also been shaken to the point that he had spat out a mouthful of blood. There were 10 people here, but only one of them is left. Moreover, all of them had been injured more or less. It was almost equivalent to a complete wipeout, and this was the fighting strength of the other party after he had been injured. Everyone was aghast as they thought of this. In particular, some low-ranked king-level experts and revered martial artists had a strange feeling in their hearts. I would have been invincible if I could have worked under such a brave and powerful clan lord, right? How awe-inspiring would that be? Dong Wushang felt that he didn't have much strength left in his body. His vision had also become somewhat fuzzy. This was a sign of excessive blood loss. He was very clear that he couldn't hold on any longer. But he wasn't resigned to this. I haven't killed everyone yet. He slowly withdrew his black saber. The tip of the saber was inserted into the ground. Then, he held the saber's hilt as if he was holding a walking stick. His eyes were as cold as ice as he swept his gaze over the people in front of him. Suddenly, he sneered mischievously. The faces of the people on the opposite side had turned as pale as paper. Everyone knew that they wouldn't be able to survive as long as Dong Wushang still had the strength to attack. They heard this sneer at this moment. Unexpectedly, they took a step back in unison. What a shame. The sneak attack from before was too light. The original plan was to have 10 elites deal with Dong Wushang and the remaining 40 people. But they had to monitor the Yu family. After all, this is no small matter. We have to be on guard from all sides. These people will lie in ambush here. The other 40 people will change into the Yu family's clothes. The 10 people from the Yu family and the Black Devil people will lie in ambush 100 miles away. The time and distance must be separated. After we finish the attack, we have to make sure that Dong Wushang doesn't have any ability to move. Then, we have to retreat immediately. The people lying in ambush will inform the Yu family. The Yu family will immediately inform the Black Devil. The Black Devil will come and get rid of Dong Wushang. In this way, the Black Devil won't know that there's a civil war in the Dong family. Moreover, the Black Devil will be the scapegoat. Even if the Dong family suspects us, we can just push it away. We didn't kill him. Moreover, the Black Devil will certainly spread the news that they killed Dong Wushang. Didn't you hear it? If everything goes smoothly, we won't have any responsibility. We will eliminate the 2 dukes and guarantee the position of the Grand Duke. Henceforth, the Dong family will outshine the others and develop rapidly. The Black Devil will never be so stupid as to betray their ally, the Yu family. Because they will certainly want to use the Yu family for bigger things. But the Dong family won't give them that opportunity. Therefore, everyone is happy. We and the Yu family won't be suspected. Dong Wushang is dead. Everyone will do their best to kill the enemy even if they have to face the Black Devil in the future. There's nothing to say about that. But they had never expected that things would go completely beyond their expectations. They had gone from being confident in their victory to a bitter fight. Moreover, both sides have suffered losses. Dong Wushang is so dreadful. Everyone's intestines turned green with regret at this moment. We would have killed Dong Wushang if we had known this would happen. Then, we would have left Dong Wushang's corpse to the Black Devil. But it's too late to say anything now. The 10 people looked at each other from afar. Everyone was seizing the time to regulate their breathing and recover their strength. The scene had suddenly quieted down from the fierce fight. Du Liu Feng was standing alone on the other side of the forest. He hadn't moved at all. He was still standing there in silence. However, the bulging muscles on the surface of his body had completely recovered. It was obvious that he would soon recover. Dong Wushang held the hilt of his saber and panted heavily. He stimulated his vitality with all his strength. Finally, he firmly looked at the people in front of him from his scattered hair. His eyes looked like 2 bolts of lightning brimming with murderous intent. He took a heavy step forward and pulled out his black saber from the ground with a clang sound. Then, he slowly raised it. He pursed his lips and revealed a cruel arc. The people on the opposite side took a step back. In fact, their legs were somewhat trembling and weak. The domineering aura that Dong Wushang displayed with this step made them feel as if they were facing the Grim Reaper, and they couldn't resist at all. Du Liu Feng let out a long shout at this time. He had finally cleansed his body of the saber energy. Then, he jumped up. Dong Wushang, second master, you can go in peace. His body flashed, and he suddenly jumped up in midair. Then, he pounced towards Dong Wushang like a thunderbolt. Dong Wushang had already raised his saber by this time. The corners of his mouth curled into a mocking smile. Suddenly, a meteor came from behind him with a shua sound. Its speed was so fast that it issued a sharp sonic boom in the air. The friction in the air produced a faint white light as this meteor flew past. And it dispersed with the wind. It was a sharp arrow. Dong Wushong felt a sense of crisis approaching him. But he didn't have enough time to dodge since he was exhausted. He only had enough time to twist his body. The sharp arrow pierced through Dong Wushong's back with a puff sound, and flew out from his right side. It was only half a foot long, and was as thin as a mosquito's. It pierced through Dong Wushong's chest, and flew forward at a high speed. Then, it pierced deeply into the front of a king-level expert. Dong Wushong's body shook. He lowered his head, and looked at the bloody hole in his chest. He felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Then, he suddenly exhaled a long breath. The black saber slowly fell. The tip of the saber pointed downwards, and pierced into the ground. He held the saber hilt with both hands, and the corners of his mouth curled into an apologetic smile. Chapter 630. Du Liu Feng hastily rushed over. His eyes were filled with pleasure and cruelty. However, something happened as soon as he jumped up. A black shadow suddenly flashed out of the woods like a demon. It arrived behind Du Liu Feng in 3 big strides like a meteor. Then, 2 iron hands heavily patted his back while Du Liu Feng was feeling the most elated. This heavy blow was carried out in midair. However, it still produced a thunderous sound. It was a loud sound. It shook the air, and caused the air to tremble and fluctuate. Du Liu Feng shouted loudly. Then, he used all his strength to grab the enemy behind him. The enemy didn't have enough time to attack him. And, he didn't have enough time to be sent flying. Du Liu Feng bit the enemy's arms from behind his back, and counterattacked with all his strength. It seemed as if the bodies of the 2 people were tied together. The ferocious attacking power finally displayed its effect at this time. Du Liu Feng faced upwards, and roared. However, he spouted out a rain of blood. The bodies of the 2 people were sent flying like meteors. Oh, wrong. Du Liu Feng had been sent flying. However, the person who had attacked him had also been sent flying along with him. That person screamed in fear. He exerted his strength with both of his hands, and tried to break free. However, Du Liu Feng had already angrily shouted, "Black Devil." Then, a great plan descended on his body like a storm. The person who had been sent flying was a black-clothed and masked man. This black-clothed and masked man was a heavenly assassin of the Black Devil clan. His true cultivation wasn't as good as Du Liu Feng's 8th grade emperor level. However, the difference wasn't far. In particular, his concealment technique and assassination skills were outstanding. He had hidden in the woods, and had launched an attack. And he had succeeded in one fell swoop. However, it was a pity that he had also lost his life. The 2 people were tightly entangled in midair. It seemed as if a pair of hoodlums were fighting. They were crazily hitting each other without any order. The domains of the 2 people rose at the same time. However, they cancelled each other out at the same time. They turned into nothingness. Every fist hit the flesh, and every foot hit the ground. Fists, feet, teeth, elbows, knees, shoulders, waist, and buttocks were all attacking weapons. In fact, even the head was a weapon. That Black Devil expert had spared no effort to struggle free. However, Du Liu Feng had wanted to drag him down with him even if he had died. "I've received that blow. So, I won't have any fighting power even if I'm still alive. So, it would be better for me to burst out completely." Some people might ask why the Black Devil didn't attack Du Liu Feng when he was adjusting his saber energy. Wouldn't that be more convenient? Du Liu Feng had obviously been regulating his breathing at that time. The saber energy had also damaged his meridians. However, Du Liu Feng would have fought back if the enemy had attacked him with a fatal blow. He would have risked serious injury to his meridians to kill the enemy. Besides, when he was healing, he was at his most vigilant. Black Demon did not have the confidence to sneak over silently. Now that he had just stood up, his vigilance was even lower. He was even more confident that victory was within his grasp. Now that he had completed his task, he would deliver a fatal blow. That was when he truly did not have the slightest bit of defense. Their bodies tangled together as they tumbled down. By the time they landed on the ground, both of them were no longer in shape. Both of their mouths were crazily spurting out mouthfuls of blood. The dignified emperor-level experts, one of them was an 8th grade, and the other was a 7th grade. But blood had splashed out from every part of their bodies when they had fallen to the ground. And the sounds of catcher and catcher were unceasingly resounding. It was unknown how many bones in their bodies had been broken. Both of them let out a final roar. They tilted their heads and opened their blood-red mouths. Their white teeth bit into each other's throats at almost the same time. Both of them didn't dodge. That was because both of them knew that they had no hope of surviving. So, they had to drag their opponent down with them before they died. Puff, puff. Blood gushed out from both of their throats at the same time. And they died at the same time. They had died an unnatural death. Dong Wushong allowed the blood to splash out from his chest and back. He remained motionless, and his face was full of ridicule. There was also a card on his chest. This card was the symbol of Chu Yang's Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Dong Wushong clearly knew that there was a medicinal pill in this card. Big Brother had once said that he could recover in an instant if he took this pill as long as his heart wasn't pierced, and as long as his head wasn't blown up on the spot, and wasn't chopped off. Dong Wushong knew that he had always known about this. But he had never thought of taking this pill. His heart was already dead. Like dead ashes. His elder brother had wanted to deal with him. And the experts under his command had come out in full force. This was already an extremely heavy blow to him, and it had smashed all the beautiful wishes in his heart to pieces. Father, you're the clan lord. How could you not know about such a big movement? Dong Wushong asked in a low voice. Tears almost flowed out again. But he forcibly held them back. Even you don't want me anymore? Dong Wushong was very clear about the strict rules of the Dong clan and the strict management of its personnel. Such a large group of people, no matter why they had come out, would inevitably be recorded in the clan. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to leave the Dong clan's gate. Therefore, Dong Wushong was even more heartbroken and desperate. I can survive if this is the case. What can I do? What can I do? The education I've received since childhood is for the clan. Everything is for the clan. My many years of hard work is for the clan. Even some of the reasons I've followed Big Brother are for the clan. Big Brother said that he wants to lead our clan to the top of the heavens. I want to lead the Dong clan to the top of the upper 3 heavens. Unfortunately, you didn't give me the chance. Who will I fight for after today? Who will I risk my life for? Who will I work hard for? Even my father is indifferent to my life and death. Even my elder brother wants to kill me. Then, what's the point of me living? Dong Wushong smiled bitterly. He smiled in despair. He smiled with a dead heart. I can take out the pill at any time. And I can recover in a moment. Even if the Heimo clan has 10 times more people, they still won't be able to stop Dong Wushong, who has fully recovered his strength. But Dong Wushong refused to accept this. It's only death. Ha ha ha. How lively. I never imagined that this duke would actually come here this time to watch a good show of a fierce battle. A gloomy voice sounded out from afar, and the voice carried unrestrainable excitement and complacency. Moreover, this good show is an internal strife. This makes me even more excited. A black figure came from afar along with this voice. He was walking slowly and confidently. He was immensely complacent and calm. This person was dressed in black. He wore a long black robe. His face was covered with a black cloth. He walked on the road as if his feet didn't touch the ground. There were more than 40 black-clothed people behind him. There seemed to be bloodstains on their bodies. Some of them were even injured. However, they were looking at the 10 people who were still standing in front of them with a victorious look in their eyes. They had the right to be proud. The enemies in front of them didn't have the slightest strength to fight back. They were practically waiting to be killed. There was no threat to speak of. The enemy's strongest 8th grade emperor-level expert had turned into a pile of rotten meat on the ground at this moment. Our side has also paid the price of a 7th grade Emperor-level expert's life. But it was worth it. The remaining people of the Dawn clan were dumbstruck. Their faces were full of despair. That Emperor-level expert shuddered. Then, he suddenly shouted, "Black Devil." That black-clothed man issued a sinister laugh. His laughter was sinister, but it was obvious that he was happy. He slowly took a step forward, and said in an elegant manner, "That's right. I hadn't expected that the illustrious and powerful Dawn clan would have heard of the name of my Black Devil clan. Yes, I am the next Black Devil of the Black Devil clan. You can call me Lord Devil." "Lord Devil?" that Emperor-level expert of the Dawn clan muttered. Then, his body suddenly shook, and he shouted, "Where are our people? Where are the people of the U clan? You, Black Devil, how did you get here? Where are our people?" The young Black Devil was surprised as he said, "Your people? Ah ha ha, you still have people there? Your people are missing. You should go and look for your people. Why are you asking me? How would I know?" That Emperor-level expert snorted and said resentfully, "Then, where are the people of the U clan?" "The people of the U clan? The people of the U clan don't have the surname Dong. So, you can't ask them." The young Black Devil laughed out loud. "However, I see that you are very pitiful. So, I will make an exception and answer your question." He shook his head and said, "You mean the 100 people of the U clan? Humph, they dared to betray the people of the Dawn clan. I can't stand such ingrates. So, I will do your Dawn clan a big favor, and kill them all. I will chop off their heads." He chuckled and said, "It just so happens that the Black Devil clan took a job. Many of them were on the list. So, I brought back their heads after I killed them. Do you want to see?" That Emperor-level expert's body swayed. His face became even paler. He opened his mouth, but didn't say anything. Instead, he spat out a mouthful of blood. "Black Devil, you. He pointed at the Black Devil, but couldn't say anything. He could only spit out mouthful after mouthful of blood. "It's over. It's all over. Only 10 people of the U clan have come. But, the Black Devil has killed more than 100 people. It's obvious that the extra 40 people were the people of the Dawn clan. Our only hope is gone." "Black Devil?" Dong Wushong seemed to have reacted. His body was somewhat sluggish. He turned around and looked at the Black Devil young master. His eyes lit up. "It's you?" The Black Devil young master sighed. "Brother Dong." Dong Wushong turned around and blocked the saber. Then, he coldly said in a low and deep voice, "You came to kill me, right?" "Yes." The Black Devil young master looked up and sighed. "I didn't expect that I would encounter such a situation. But, Brother Dong, I'm also grateful for this situation. After watching your fight, I realized that I'm not as good as you." He laughed. Although his laughter this time was sinister, it was filled with disappointment and respect. "If I were to face you directly, I'm afraid that you would definitely be able to break out of the encirclement unscathed. On the other hand, my side would suffer heavy casualties." Dong Wushong's body swayed. He didn't say anything. "I'm sorry, Brother Dong. I'm sorry that I can't have a fair fight with you. Even though I want to," the Black Devil young master solemnly said, "but I must kill you today. In order to show my respect for you, I'll kill this person first. Then, I'll kill you. It can be considered as taking revenge for you. So, you can rest in peace in the underworld." Dong Wushong sneered and said in a mocking tone, "The Black Devil clan has an internal strife. Ha ha ha. What a joke. Revenge. Humph. Do I need you to take revenge for me? 3rd update. I'm afraid the 4th update won't be enough. Let's make it up to you tomorrow, brothers and sisters. I need your guaranteed monthly votes for May. The 1st to the 7th month of the 5th month will still require double monthly votes. This is a rare opportunity. I hope that everyone will accompany me and try again." Chapter 631. Dong Wushong sneered and sneered. "The Black Devil clan is taking advantage of internal strife. Ha ha ha. How laughable. Revenge. Humph. Do I need you to take revenge for me?" The Black Devil young master was startled. He carefully looked at Dong Wushong's chest and the injuries all over his body. He was sure that Dong Wushong was like a lamp that had run out of oil. So, he asked in bewilderment, "Brother Dong, you're already like this. Don't tell me you still want to take revenge with your own hands." Dong Wushong coughed and laughed. He stopped his body while laughing, and raised his head. His blade-like eyes looked disdainfully at the Black Devil young master. Then, he didn't care that his body was bleeding unceasingly. He didn't care that his life force was draining away. He operated his primary power with all his strength. His body gradually emitted the unique aura of a saber emperor as he operated his cultivation technique. He didn't move. But, the aura he suddenly emitted still shocked the Black Devil young master. He was seriously injured and on the verge of death. But, the glorious aura he emitted at this moment was no different from his peak. He was still looking disdainfully at the world. He was still dominating the Jianghu. His body couldn't stop shaking. But, he was still an unshakable lofty mountain in the eyes of the Black Devil assassins. This was a natural heroic spirit. It was a mighty and domineering aura in his bones. It couldn't change even if he died. Even these cold-blooded assassins couldn't help but reveal a look of admiration in their eyes when they faced such a heroic figure. Dong Wushong looked at the Black Devil young master with a smile that wasn't a smile. He naturally had a sense of disdain in his eyes. Then, he said somewhat regretfully and mockingly, "So, you're not a hero." "I'm not a hero?" The Black Devil young master was startled. He muttered and repeated this sentence. Then, he said in puzzlement, "Brother Dong, please enlighten me. I died today because I wanted to die. So, I died. So, I don't need anyone to take revenge for me." Dong Wushong laughed and proudly said, "No one in the world can make me die if I, Dong Wushong, don't want to die. Do you understand?" The Black Devil young master frowned. He pondered for a while and said, "I understand this sentence. I also understand why you didn't run away. I also understand why you wanted to die. It's because your heart is dead." "That's right." Dong Wushong laughed at himself and said, "Moreover, I don't want anyone to take revenge for me. But, I do. But, someone will take revenge for me, only they have the right to avenge me, and you don't deserve it." The Black Demon young master narrowed his eyes and said in a gloomy voice, "I'm not worthy." "That's right, you're not worthy. You don't deserve to avenge me." Dong Wushong laughed disdainfully. "You're just an assassin who hides in the dark and doesn't dare to see the light of day. I, Dong Wushong, have always been open and aboveboard. I've run amok in the world. Do you think that you're worthy to avenge me?" The Black Demon young master glared at him. The ominous glint in his eyes became more and more intense. It seemed as if he was about to fly into a rage out of humiliation. The look in Dong Wushang's eyes did not change. He was still arrogant and cynical. They looked at each other for a long time. Then, the Black Devil young master gasped for breath. Finally, he lowered his head in disappointment. He forced a smile and said, "Yes, I'm not worthy." He said somewhat enviously, "Perhaps. Only King of Hell Chu and Jiu Duxing are worthy of taking revenge for you. I really don't deserve it." "You're right, because I'm just an assassin in the dark." The Black Devil young master chuckled and said indifferently, "However, I have no choice in this matter. Dong Wushong, if you were in my place, you wouldn't be so heroic and tyrannical." He seemed to have found an excuse for himself as he said this. His voice became calm again. "Heroes don't ask where they come from." Dong Wushong sneered and said, "You're looking for an excuse to absolve yourself. That's not what a hero should do. Are Chu Yang and Jiu Duxing heroes?" The Black Devil young master seemed somewhat unconvinced. Dong Wushong's eyes suddenly brightened when he heard him mention Chu Yang and Jiu Duxing's names. Then, they immediately darkened. "Yes. They are my brothers. My best brothers. Therefore, they deserve to avenge me," Dong Wushong said proudly. Then I don't understand. Since you still have good brothers in this world, why don't you want to live anymore?" The Black Devil young master asked in a somewhat critical manner, "Don't tell me that you're not afraid that your brothers will be sad for you. I also want to meet with them. But, I can't. Dong Wushang's words were clearly not an answer to the Black Devil young master. Instead, he was explaining something to his brothers. Or, he was explaining it to himself or to the world. His voice was somewhat ethereal and somewhat sad, because my heart is dead. Even if I live, this will be my inner demon. I can't get rid of it for life. Therefore, I can't keep up with their footsteps. I know what I care about the most. Therefore, I can't control myself from thinking about these things. Therefore, my heart is dead. I can only endlessly burden them if I live. Dong Wushang smiled faintly. He looked at the Black Devil young master with pity. Do you know that my brothers are all heaven-defying talents? How can I burden them? How can a person who burdens his brothers be qualified to live? Although my brothers don't care, I, Dong Wushang, care. Therefore, Black Devil, I sympathize with you the most, because you don't even have a real brother. If you had one, you wouldn't have asked me this question. Dong Wushang looked at him mockingly. The gloomy aura around the Black Devil young master's body became even denser. Dong Wushang's mockery seemed to have hit his weak spot. However, he panted heavily. He didn't say anything. Instead, he pondered. My brothers will be sad if I die. But if they avenge me, it will arouse their fighting spirit and make them even more united. They will cherish their brothers even more and work even harder. They will also achieve greater things. Dong Wushang said indifferently, so, what harm is there in the death of a person whose heart has died? I don't have brothers. I can't feel it. But, I'm envious. The Black Devil young master's voice was somewhat gloomy and feminine as he said, but, I'm an assassin who can't see the light of day. Don't you think it's too ridiculous for me to have brothers? Dong Wushang looked at him strangely. Whether you have brothers or not, does it have anything to do with whether you're an assassin or not? Does it have anything to do with it? Does it have anything to do with it? The Black Devil young master slowly muttered. After a long time, he raised his head. Even if it doesn't matter, even if I don't have brothers, what does it have to do with whether I'm a hero or not? But, why do you say that I'm not a hero? He was somewhat agitated as he said, even assassins can't see the light of day. But, there are also heroes. It just depends on whether the meaning of being a hero is the same as yours. And, this is Jianghu. What is Jianghu? Slaughter. Blood. Why do you say that I'm not a hero? Don't tell me that I'm not a hero when I take advantage of your perilous state to kill you. Don't tell me that I should wait for you to recover before I die at your hands. Then, I'm a hero? His question was very urgent, very quick and very sharp. You don't understand what a hero is. Dong Wushang chuckled. Then, he looked up and sighed, fine. You're the last person I talk to in this world. So, I'll say a few more words to you. Otherwise, I'll be too lonely on the road to hell. You said that you want to take revenge for me first. Hee hee. Dong Wushang sneered and said, you killed them. So, what does it have to do with me? That's it. Secondly, they are my Dong clan's people. Even if I, Dong Wushang, am ostracized by my clan and killed by them, this is my Dong clan's matter. What does it have to do with you? Thirdly, no one can say anything if I kill them. But, how can an outsider kill my Dong clan's people? Dong Wushang sneered, you want to kill them? So, I'll kill you. I haven't been expelled from the clan. I'm still a member of the Dong clan. So, I'm still their second master even if they want to kill me. You want to kill them? Have you asked for my permission? Dong Wushang continued to sneer, I can chop them into pieces. I would have perished together with them if you hadn't come today. If I kill all of you today, I'll kill all of them later. But, they can't die in your hands before I die. Who do you think you are? Dong Wushang laughed out loud, you dare to kill my Dong clan's people? The Black Devil young master was wearing a veil over his face. But, one could clearly see that he was dumbfounded. That was because his eyes had almost popped out of their sockets. There was also a clear dent in the mouth of his veil. He had never expected that Dong Wushang's reason would be this. But, what kind of reason is this? Dong Wushang had wanted to kill me a moment ago. And, I had also wanted to kill him as if I was cutting a watermelon. But, he didn't allow me to kill him now. There's such a principle in the world. He would have sighed if he knew what Dongwu Lei had said to Dongwu Shong. These two brothers are worthy of being called brothers. Their protective nature is as good as that. Moreover, Dongwu Shong is even better than his elder brother. It's unimaginable that he would be so protective of his younger brother to this extent. A man like you is very strange. The Black Devil young master smiled sinisterly. Then, he sighed in a low voice and said, "It would be a very lucky thing if someone could be the brother of a man like you." Dongwu Shong took a deep breath and stopped his body from swaying. His eyes flashed with brilliance as he proudly said, "That's because you haven't come into contact with my brothers. You would have known that being their brother is the luckiest thing in life if you knew what we've gone through." The Black Devil young master remained silent. "I'm very lucky to be your brother. And I'm also very lucky to be your subordinate." Then, the Black Devil young master finally opened his mouth and said, "I'm very moved." He raised his head, and his eyes flickered a little. "But it's a pity that you must die today. I don't want to kill you. But I must kill you." An expert behind Dongwu Shong suddenly said in a trembling voice, "Second master, shut up." Dongwu Shong coldly shouted, "You must die no matter what. Even if we die, we can't die in vain." This expert suddenly stuck out his chest. They had thought that they would die without a doubt behind Dongwu Shong. But they had felt a surge of warmth in their bodies after Dongwu Shong had spoken those words. "Even if we die, we still have someone to protect us. He wants to kill us too. But he's still a member of the Dong clan." The Black Devil young master's eyes were filled with conflicting emotions. He looked at Dongwu Shong's eyes. He was clearly hesitant. But he finally waved his hand and shouted, "Attack! Kill! To be continued." Chapter 632. After saying this, he closed his eyes and turned around. It was as if he couldn't bear to see Dongwu Shong being dismembered. Dongwu Shong sneered. He slowly raised his saber from the ground. The blade was cold. This battle would be the last battle of his life. He slowly said, "Black Devil, are you not going to take my life personally?" Young Black Devil's eyes flashed with a complicated light. He said eerily, "I don't dare." This sentence was eerie, but it was very real. It was definitely not sarcastic. He didn't dare. He really didn't dare. Because the current Dongwu Shong could still explode with a final attack at any time, and it was also his only attack. Even if Dongwu Shong died immediately after this final attack, the Black Devil couldn't avoid being injured. It just depended on the severity of the injury. Dongwu Shong laughed. He slowly raised his saber in front of his chest. He looked up to the sky and shouted, "Black Devil, although we are about to be separated by life and death, this sentence of yours is the greatest respect for me, Dongwu Shong. You don't dare. You don't dare. Ha 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 ha. Who dares?" Dongwu Shong roared. He glared and took a step forward. His eyes shot out a divine light. He looked at the experts of the Black Devil in front of him. Young Black Devil's face was red behind the veil. There were more than 10 high-level assassins of the Black Devil in front of Dongwu Shong. They were intimidated by his aura. All of them suddenly felt their hearts palpitate. It was as if their hearts had suddenly stopped beating. They unexpectedly took a step back in unison. Their eyes involuntarily revealed a look of fear. Dongwu Shong was on the verge of death. His power suppressed more than 10 top assassins, and none of them dared to take a step forward. Who dares? Dongwu Shong roared again. He took another step forward. His blood-stained black hair suddenly flew up and fluttered in the wind. He looked like a demon god. The Black Devil subordinates took another step back. They wanted to stand up and face the attack. These people were all murderers. Who had they feared in their lives? But at this moment, they couldn't take a step forward. Their hearts wanted to go forward, but their feet couldn't help but retreat. Some people wanted to roar to boost their morale, but they found that they couldn't. Dongwu Shang's earth-shattering aura made them completely unable to raise any thoughts of resistance at this moment. Who dares? Who dares to fight with me, Dongwu Shang? Dongwu Shang let out a long howl. Then, he took another step forward with a loud boom. Suddenly, he He burst out laughing. Ha 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 ha. How delightful. The Black Devil young master looked at Dong Wushang's godlike appearance. Suddenly, his mind shook, and his eyes became somewhat intoxicated in an instant. This was a true hero. A peerless hero. At this moment, Dong Wushang gave Black Devil young master a feeling. Even if the sky were to collapse at this moment, Dong Wushang would still be able to split it into two with a single slash. A real man like Dong Wushang would not have lived his life in vain if he could have this kind of spirit. It was a pity that such a hero was going to fall in his own hands, dying at such a young age. It was a pity. What a Dong Wushang! Good spirit. The Black Devil young master circulated his martial power with all his might, and praised with a thunderous voice. This sentence cut Dong Wushang's imposing aura in half. After all, Dong Wushang was already an arrow at the end of its flight. More than a dozen Black Devil experts seemed to have been awakened from a dream at the same time. Each of them had an extremely ashamed and angry look on their faces. They all shouted at the same time. Go! The Black Devil young master looked up to the sky and sighed. More than a dozen experts rushed forward at the same time. Dong Wushang burst out laughing. Come on! He raised his saber, and rushed out with big strides. His body was seriously injured, and he couldn't jump. But, he still took big strides forward with an upright posture. In fact, it seemed as if he was crossing a mountain with one step, and crossing a sea with one step. One step, and one cycle. One step, and one life and death. Both sides were about to engage in close combat. An intense ruthlessness flashed in Dong Wushang's eyes. The saber light flashed, and the 280-kilogram black saber was raised high. At this moment, the sound of galloping horses' hooves suddenly resounded from a distance like rolling thunder. The sound of galloping horses' hooves was as rapid as a gale, and as dense as a shower. Just by listening to this, one could imagine how anxious the person on the horse was at this moment. Everyone who was about to engage in battle was shocked in their heart. A man and a horse were rushing over from a distance like a whirlwind. The man hadn't arrived yet, but he had already anxiously roared, Wushang, tilde 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 tilde. This roar came from a distance like a thunderclap, and echoed from all directions. Anxiety, heartache, fear, worry, pampering, all kinds of emotions seemed to be contained in this roar. This roar was simply the fusion of the 7 desires of life. Dong Wushang suddenly raised his head, and looked at the man and his horse in disbelief. His eyes suddenly emitted a luster, and his lifeless eyes finally regained some vitality. Ma Rulong arrived in front of them very quickly. A figure jumped down from the horse's back as if he was flying. He glanced at the 50 men of Hei Mo in an indifferent manner. It seemed as if he didn't care about them at all. As if no one else was present. Dong Wu Lei! Several assassins of Black Devil coldly snorted, and were about to attack. The young man's eyes emitted a dazzling light. But, he waved his hand, and snorted. Several assassins of Black Devil kept quiet out of fear, and shrank back. Dong Wushang looked at his elder brother walking towards him. He suddenly became very excited. It seemed as if he was looking forward to something. Is this for real? Dong Wu Lei didn't have any misgivings. He passed through the crowd with no regard for anyone else. He strode over, and stood in front of Dong Wushang. Then, his sharp gaze swept over Dong Wushang's body from top to bottom. He swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva, and his pupils shrank. A look of worry and heartache flashed across his eyes. But, he quickly concealed it, and changed it into a calm and controlled voice. Who did this? Who hurt my brother? Dong Wushang's body suddenly trembled with these words. His nose turned sour, and his ice-cold heart recovered in an instant. His tightly shut mouth couldn't help but flatten in a split second. He remembered when he was young, he would cause trouble outside, fight with others, and suffer losses. But, his elder brother would always arrive in time, and then look at the injuries on his body, and ask with heartache, who did it? Who hit my brother? He hadn't heard these words since he was 10 years old. But, he finally heard them today. Dong Wushang suddenly realized that he had become weak. Dong Wushang didn't know when this word weak had faded from his life. But, he suddenly wanted to cry out loud at this moment. This was inconceivable for a man like Dong Wushong who was made of iron. But this was the fact. His nose turned sour, and his tears started to flow uncontrollably. The remaining experts of the Dong clan behind Dong Wushong trembled. Some were happy, some were worried, and some were puzzled. How did eldest young master come here at this time? There are enemies everywhere. Dong clan doesn't have any fighting power. So, he came here alone. What should we do? Moreover, it's strange. Could it be that eldest young master didn't know about the ambush of the second duke? Moreover, he opposed it. But, young mistress, I'm confused. I'm really confused. Black Devil. I want to bandage my brother's wounds. You can kill him later if you want to. Dong Wu Lei looked at Dong Wushong with his back facing the Black Devil. He insipidly said without turning his head, I'm the only one from the Dong clan this time. You can rest assured. You can wait until I'm done with my business. Is that okay? Young Black Devil swallowed his saliva with some difficulty. He didn't know why, but his eyes had become moist. But he took a deep breath and said in a gloomy manner, You're about to die. Why are you bandaging your wounds? Won't you become a corpse in a while even if you bandage your wounds like a rice dumpling? Dong Wu Lei tore a strip of cloth from his underwear and started to bandage Dong Wushong's wounds as if no one else was present. He insipidly said, I'm going to die in a while. But that's another matter. But I must bandage his wounds before I die. This bastard doesn't know how to take care of himself. He doesn't know how to stop the bleeding, even if I go to the underworld with him to meet the ancestors. I'm his elder brother. What if the ancestors ask me, why is my brother in such a miserable state? Wouldn't I lose face as his elder brother? I must bandage my brother's wounds even if I die in an instant. Dong Wu Lei insipidly said, How I treat my brother is my responsibility. I can't throw away this responsibility in life and death. Although, I'm very jealous of him. And, I also want him to disappear. Dong Wushong wanted to say something. But, he felt that his throat was choked with emotions. He couldn't say a word. Young Black Devil calmly looked at them for a while. Then, he said in a hoarse voice, All right. I'll give you brothers a quarter of an hour in that case. Dong Wu Lei paused for a moment. Then, he said in a low and deep voice, Black Devil, you're worthy of being a hero among assassins. Young Black Devil didn't know why, but he felt somewhat comforted in his heart when he heard these words. He forced a smile and said in his heart, Your younger brother just scolded me for not being a hero. He scolded me until I was bleeding. But, you're doing the opposite now. You're saying that I'm a hero. You didn't fully admit it. You only said that I'm a hero among assassins. But, you're much more polite than your younger brother. He couldn't help but ask as he thought of this, Dong Wu Lei, are you a hero? Dong Wu Lei didn't turn his head as he replied, I'm not. Heroes die quickly. Just like this stupid pig Dong Wushong. I'm not a hero. I can barely be regarded as a very incompetent and far-fetched ambitious and ruthless person. Dong Wu Lei was indeed not a hero. He was even jealous of his own younger brother. He had pushed him aside. He had fought for power and profit in his clan. He had used all his schemes. How could he be regarded as a hero with such behavior? But he wasn't an ambitious and ruthless person. An ambitious and ruthless person would never be as impulsive as he was now. He would have made a prompt decision to retreat if he had been an ambitious and ruthless person when he had seen the people of Black Devil clan surrounding the dying Dong Wushong. He would have prioritized his own life no matter how much pain and unwillingness he had felt at that time. However, Dong Wu Lei had rushed over without any consideration. That was because he had seen his younger brother's entire body covered in blood. It seemed as if he would die in the next moment. And he had suddenly forgotten everything. He had forgotten power. He had forgotten benefits. He had forgotten status. Chapter 633. The World Defying Heavens, by Wind Conquers the World. If you like this work, please vote for it or collect it. Don't know how to vote or collect it? Please read the post, D4467, Let's dance in the clouds and defy the heavens together. Let's read this magnificent chapter together. There was only one thought in Dongwu Lei's mind at that moment. This is my younger brother. I won't let him die even if I die. I'll die with him even if he has to die. My younger brother is young. He'll be alone on the road to hell. He'll be afraid. Therefore, he impulsively rushed towards his younger brother. He had always been jealous and suspicious of him. I don't have to shed tears. But I must make sure that he doesn't get injured. Young Black Devil became silent when he heard Dongwu Lei's words. If someone understood him, they would have discovered that young Black Devil, the future king of the world of assassins, was silently laughing. Dongwu Lei had already started to bandage Dongwu Shang's wounds in a deft manner. He tore off a piece of underwear from Dongwu Shang's body and started to bandage his younger brother's wounds one by one. This well-dressed great duke of the Dong clan had rushed over in a short period of time. But his body was already in tatters. The people of the Black Devil clan silently looked at the two brothers. One of them had tears in his eyes. He was standing motionless. And the other was constantly busy. He was meticulously bandaging Dong Wushang's wounds. His strength was gentle and careful. However, no one dared to move before young Black Devil gave the order. Besides, the Dong brothers were like turtles in a jar. They couldn't run away. So, they weren't in a hurry. Dongwu Lei's heart had already sunk while he was bandaging his younger brother's wound. A kind of despair had welled up in his heart. He wanted to cry. Dongwu Shang's body had over 100 big and small injuries. The most serious one was a bloody hole in his chest. It ran from the front to the back. His waist had been punched. But it had swollen all around. But his waist had caved in. This was a serious internal injury. Dongwu Lei's hands were trembling. He still had a slim hope. My younger brother is a martial arts genius. He's a saber emperor. I would have bandaged his wounds. And I would have gone all out with my subordinates to cover Dongwu Shang's escape. However, he was in despair now. Dongwu Shang's injuries. He hadn't died on the spot. It was already very good. He could die at any time if he used too much strength. There was no way to save him. He was dead for sure. Dongwu Lei's breathing became coarse and heavy. He was exerting more and more force. His voice sounded like the roar of an ox. He was trying his best to control his bitterness and heartache, but he couldn't. He only felt that his chest was sore and painful. It was so painful that he wished he was dead. Dong Wushang stood there contentedly. Right now, his heart was filled with happiness. My brother is still my brother. I'm content. Dongwu Lei bandaged most of Dong Wushang's serious wounds. Then, he turned his head to look at the remaining members of the Dong clan while tying knots on his brother's wounds. Everyone wanted to avoid his gaze. But Dongwu Lei's sharp gaze had already shot over. Is it you who injured Wushang? His voice was heavy and oppressive. It was still dull and indifferent. However, he had clenched his teeth as he spoke. Anyone would be able to hear the resentment contained in these words. Yes. Everyone agreed at the same time. Then, they lowered their heads. They realized at the same time, we are done for. Eldest young master doesn't know about this matter arranged by eldest young mistress. Everyone wasn't afraid of death. But they were afraid that they would be branded as traitors before they died. Then, their wives and children in the clan would be finished. The muscles on Dongwu Lei's face twitched. He exposed a somewhat hysterical and sinister expression. Then, he swallowed a mouthful of air and insipidly said, "What about the others? Dead. All dead. Even the second senior elder is dead." Everyone felt sorrowful in their hearts. Had I known earlier that eldest young master didn't mean to do this? Why did I bother to do this? Wouldn't these people have died in vain? It's good that they died. It's good that they died. It saves me the trouble. Dongwu Lei nodded. He took a deep breath. Were they killed by the second senior elder? Or the Black Devil? Yes, it was the second senior elder. Everyone didn't dare to conceal anything. They nodded one after another. It's good that they died. It saves me the trouble. Is this the Grand Duke's evaluation of those people? Everyone felt dizzy. It's good that they were killed. Dong Wu Lei nodded again. He clenched his teeth and said, they deserved to die. They deserved to die. It's good that they were killed, again. Why didn't you people die? Dong Wu Lei's eyes suddenly became cruel and vicious like a vulture's. He coldly said, you obstructed the second senior elder as subordinates. You were disloyal, unfilial, heartless, and unrighteous. So, why are you still alive? Everyone's face exposed a look of despair and grief. I've already punished that B*TCHU Xiu. And, you people are my accomplices. Dong Wu Lei coldly said, when has the Dong clan's order ever been issued, from the mouths of ignorant women and children? You're so gullible that you've caused my brother and I to die here today. The Dong clan doesn't have a successor. Its destruction is right in front of your eyes. You've committed such a heinous crime. But, you're still standing in front of me with a clear conscience. Everyone's complexion turned ashen. They were on the verge of collapse. Don't say that you're loyal to me, or to the Dong clan. You didn't deserve to be a member of my Dong clan from the moment you attacked the second senior elder. Dong Wu Lei's voice was soft. But, his voice and countenance were stern. Bean-sized beads of cold sweat trickled down his face. But, he lowered his head, and didn't dare to say a word. Big brother. Dong Wu Shong was so excited that he couldn't speak. Dong Wu Lei heaved a long sigh. He then said in a low and deep voice, Wu Shong, would you believe me if I said that I didn't know about this matter? I believe you. Dong Wu Shong nodded heavily. But, he was happy from the bottom of his heart. Dong Wu Lei has personally risked his life in this hopeless situation. So, what's there to be worried about? What's there to not believe? Good brother. Dong Wu Lei laughed heartily. His face and eyes were biased towards a malicious temperament. So, it was somewhat strange for him to issue such a hearty laugh. I'm indeed afraid of you. I can't wait for you to disappear. Dong Wu Lei's gaze was still somewhat complicated as he looked at his younger brother, but, I'll look for you myself if I can't bear it. And, I'll make you leave. I'll kill you if you don't leave. I've worked hard for more than 20 years to become the clan lord of the Dong clan. I won't give up. Do you understand? I understand. Dong Wu Shong nodded heavily. My heart feels a lot more comfortable now that I've said these things. Dong Wu Lei smiled. I wouldn't have said it if it weren't for the fact that it was completely hopeless. He looked at his younger brother with concern as he said this. Then, he asked, can you still hold on? Yes. Dong Wu Shong nodded heavily. His complexion was weak, but his spirit was already roused. Good. You and I haven't fought together for many years. Dong Wu Lei faintly smiled. I didn't expect that we'd be fighting side by side in the final battle this time. In fact, it's a battle to the death. Speaking of which, I'm somewhat grateful to your sister-in-law. That's because she left a route for the Dong clan. He smiled and softly said, I had planned to divorce her as long as I returned this time. But now, I'm somewhat reluctant to part with her. Ha ha. Dong Wu Shong swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Then, he said in a low voice, Big brother, sister-in-law is doing this for your own good. For my own good. Dong Wu Lei smiled coldly, but, her reasons can't represent my feelings. Even the most heinous people have a reason for everything they do. Therefore, I never listen to reasons or explanations. I only look at the results. The results make me unhappy. So, they deserve to die even if they have a big reason. Dong Wu Lei sighed. He looked at Dong Wu Shong with heartache and regret. Brother, Wu Shong, it's a pity that we're going to die today. It's a pity that your youth and unrivaled talent are going to be wasted. It's your big brother's fault. Dong Wu Shong's eyes emitted a fervent luster. He put his hand into his bosom and said, Big brother, we may not necessarily die. Dong Wu Shong felt an intense desire erupt in his heart at this moment. I don't want to die. His hand tightly grasped the jade token in front of his chest. It was the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's jade token. Dong Wu Lei felt his eyes become hot. He looked at his younger brother's young and happy face, and couldn't help but feel as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. He knew why Dong Wu Shong was so happy even though he had suffered such serious injuries. It was because he had been longing for himself. He had been longing for the revival of brotherly love. Dong Wushong had finally woken up today. However, it was already too late. But his younger brother was still so happy from the bottom of his heart even though he was about to die. Dong Wulei felt an intense pain in his heart. But he endured the intense sourness in his heart. He slowly stood up, turned his back, and said with sorrow, "Yes, we may not necessarily die. However, he had secretly made up his mind, I won't let you die even if I have to die. You must die after me even if you have to die. I can't bear the thought of my younger brother being killed in front of me." Dong Wulei strode towards young Black Devil as he thought of this. His complexion was calm, and his footsteps were steady. Young Black Devil seemed to know what Dong Wulei wanted to do when he saw Dong Wulei walking over. So, he waved his hand to signal the others not to obstruct him. Dong Wulei arrived in front of young Black Devil without any hindrance. Young Black Devil looked at him with his sharp eyes. Then, he sinisterly said, "Have you come to beg for mercy?" The token in Dong Wushong's bosom cracked open with a soft sound. There was a small and flat purple crystal bottle inside. Dong Wushong's hand trembled as he said in his heart, "Big brother, thank you." The next moment, the incomplete version of the heavy pill was already in his mouth. Dong Wushong suddenly felt a surge of heat in his dantian. The damaged meridians all over his body were like seedlings that had been in a drought for a long time. The meridians in his body were recovering at lightning speed at this moment. In fact, he could even feel the various wounds on his body. Moreover, he could feel the itchiness of his muscles as they healed. His meridians were repaired in the blink of an eye. His internal injuries were repaired the next moment. Then, his exhausted elemental power suddenly converged. Thousands of streams converged into a river, and gradually set off monstrous waves in his dantian. The wounds on his body scabbed over in a flash, and then fell off. The penetrating wound on his chest was fusing at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. It slowly turned into a small pit. Then, it slowly swelled up and smoothed out. Dong Wushong suddenly opened his eyes. Two sharp divine lights shot out from his eyes. They were like saber lights, and they came out majestically. At this time, Dong Wulei also said something to the Black Devil, "Let my younger brother go. I'll let you do whatever you want to me." I clicked on a few posts for monthly votes. I found that many of my brothers had written down their words when they were voting for me. I apologize for this. Those posts were posted by the system. They weren't on the front page of the book review section. I rarely clicked on them. Moreover, there were too many posts, and I didn't have time to read them. I might have missed a lot of them. I have to tell everyone that if you have any words or suggestions, you can post them in the book review section. I read them every day. Of course, there are some people scolding me in the book review section. But, please rest assured that I've already been through a lot. Requesting monthly votes. There are still 2 more updates today. It will be a little late. I haven't eaten since I woke up. Requesting monthly votes. I won't say any more. Words are provided by the Qihang update team. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for it. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 634. Young Black Eagle's body trembled as he cried out, "What?" He had thought of many possibilities. He thought that Dong Wulei had come to beg for mercy, or to negotiate terms, or to surrender, or to. However, he hadn't expected that Dong Wulei wouldn't do anything, and would only say such a sentence. Dong Wushong was dead for sure in the current situation. However, if Dong Wulei had hardened his heart, he would have been able to break out of the encirclement and return alive. However, Dong Wulei had given up on him, and wanted his dying brother to go back. "Don't you know that your brother won't live for long even if he goes back?" Black Devil's voice was hoarse as he looked at Dong Wulei. "Even if I don't kill him now, and let him leave, I'm afraid he'll die before he reaches the Dawn Clan's gate." "Don't you know?" Dong Wulei coldly snorted and said, "So what? I just want my brother to go back. My brother went out to commit a crime for nearly a year. He hasn't seen my father, or my mother. Dong Wu Lei mischievously smiled and said, I miss him very much. I see him every day at home. It's cruel to see him before he dies, but it's better than not seeing him at all. I only have this one request. Do you agree? Ji Wu Lei insipidly said, you came here today to kill. In other words, you came here to kill Wu Shong. Now, you've won a complete victory, and you've spared me. I'll die in your hands. I won't be able to hold on for long with my supreme injury. I'll die for sure. Your goal has been achieved. Do you agree? Dong Wu Lei asked in a deep voice. Moreover, this will reduce a lot of casualties for you. Do you agree? The young man, hey mi, suddenly felt that he was panicking. Do I agree? Just as Dong Wu Lei said, I've achieved my goal this time. Moreover, this condition can reduce casualties and preserve my strength. Do I agree? Don't I agree? He hesitated. The Black Devil assassins around also looked at their young master with bright eyes. In their opinion, they couldn't agree at all. The psychological satisfaction of killing a powerhouse in a battle, and killing a high-ranking person, couldn't be replaced by any enjoyment. However, if he were to kill a helpless person, how could there be any pleasure in that? Wasn't the reputation of the Jianghu people based on stepping on the corpses of their enemies step by step? Good. Guo couldn't help looking at Dong Wushang's direction. He was ready to agree. He knew that he shouldn't agree, but he had to. The moment he opened his mouth, he suddenly saw Dong Wushang. Then, the words that were about to leave the door got stuck in his throat. Because Dong Wushang slowly stood up and walked over step by step. The broadsword stood upright on his shoulder, and his eyes shone brightly. Obviously, he was full of spirit and energy. The young man took a step back. Behind his mask, his mouth was wide open. His eyes were filled with disbelief. In the depths of his eyes, there was even a hint of joy. Perhaps, even the black demon himself did not know about this faint trace of joy Dong Wu Lei was about to urge him. But, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. So, he followed young Black Devil's line of sight, and turned his head to look. He couldn't help but let out a gar sound. He was completely startled. His entire body stiffened. What did I just see? I actually saw a healthy younger brother. Dong Wu Lei blinked his eyes with all his might. He blinked again. Then, he raised his hand and rubbed his eyes with all his might. Suddenly, tears burst out of his eyes. He wanted to hold them back, but he couldn't help it. He covered his eyes with all his might, and coughed with all his might. This is too shameful. The old watermark of departure actually cried in front of so many enemies, Black Demon, I have recovered. Dong Wushang slashed with his broadsword, and a big tree in the distance fell down and split into pieces. Don't talk about any conditions. You can't kill us now. Do you regret it? Dong Wushang said indifferently. Dong Wushang was tall and sturdy. When he stood in front of young Hei Mi, young Hei Mo was tall and slender. However, when he stood in front of Dong Wushang, he was actually shorter than him by a head. The Black Devil young master took a deep breath. A strange look flashed through his eyes. He seemed to have heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he said in a sinister voice, regret? Of course, I regret it. I regret that I didn't kill you earlier. Even Dong Wushang could hear the insincerity in his words. He couldn't help but laugh. Young Black Demon stood there quietly for a while. He lowered his head. No one could see the look in his eyes. If someone saw it, they would be very surprised. Because his eyes clearly showed that he was relieved. He seemed to have found a reason to be relieved. He suddenly waved his hand and said, give up on this mission. Leave immediately. He turned around and flew away. The 4 heaven-grade assassins behind him were the most astonished. We are leaving just like that. What are we doing here? So what if Dong Wushang has recovered? We have more than 10 people on our side. 4 heaven-grade assassins, plus Xiao Gui. In addition, we have more than 50 earth-grade assassins. Our strength is absolutely overwhelming. Even if we can't kill Dong Wushang, we can pay a price to severely injure him. And, Dong Wushang will definitely die. Why should we leave when we have such a good situation? Young master, this One of the heaven-grade assassins looked at his Xiao Gui's back with some hesitation and said, "I said, leave." Young black demon snorted from afar. He said gloomily, "Do you have an opinion?" "But we." Type drop mouth J reciprocal drop mouth no but. The world cries when the saber emperor appears. Haven't you heard of this sentence? Rather than forming an irreconcilable enmity, it's better to do a favor today. Young black demon said. His slender body floated far away. His gloomy voice came from afar. Dong Wushang, you owe me a favor. Remember. The black demon assassins were stunned for a while. That heaven-grade assassin finally waved his hand. He said with some hatred and unwillingness, "Leave." Swish. Swish. The Heimo killers disappeared without a trace. Dong Wushang smiled bitterly. He knew that young black demon's words were not wrong. If it was a fight to the death, he wouldn't have a problem escaping even if he couldn't win against the enemy's numbers. However, the problem was that his elder brother would definitely die. Young black demon's departure was like sending an adult to him. Dong Wushang didn't know why young black demon, who was famous for being gloomy and terrifying in the three heavens, would leave so easily today. He knew that there must be a reason for this. However, he couldn't figure out what the reason was. It seemed that no matter what he said, it didn't make sense. However, he had to remember this favor. Moreover, no one could bear to owe such a favor between friend and foe. Yi Wushang and Dong Wu Lei hadn't noticed that the Black Devil young master had walked far away into the forest. But, he had suddenly emerged from the treetops when he had entered the forest. It seemed as if he had glanced at them from afar. Then, he had disappeared into the dusky forest like a breeze. A gust of wind blew past, dispersing the sigh of an unknown emotion. However, how could these two brothers care about young black demon at this moment? Elder brother. Dong Wushang took a step forward excitedly. Wushang, you're fine? Dong Wushang couldn't believe it. Oh, I'm fine. Dong Wushang naturally knew that his big brother's divine medicine was a top secret. Elder brother was good to him. However, Dong Wushang was afraid of his big brother's unscrupulous ways to achieve his goal. Big brother would be in trouble if he knew about it. Therefore, Dong Wushang's gaze was evasive, and his words were vague. So fast. Gongcai is clearly. Dong Wushang wanted to say, Gongcai was clearly half dead. So, how did he recover so quickly? Isn't this too fake? However, he didn't say anything after thinking about it. Dong Wushang wasn't good at lying. So, he couldn't speak. His gaze kept wandering around. You're pretending to be Gongcai? Dong Wushang finally thought of a possibility. His complexion couldn't help but sink as he asked angrily. Dong Wushang opened his eyes wide. He thought for a while, and felt that this was a good idea. So, he couldn't help but nod foolishly. You're pissing me off. Dong Wushang pointed his finger at Dong Wushang's nose. He thought that he was so regretful that he almost wanted to commit suicide. I didn't expect that this bastard was pretending. Doesn't that mean that he was watching me make a fool of myself from the beginning? I've lost a lot of face this time. Dong Wushang's face turned from white to red, from red to purple, from purple to black, and from black to green. Suddenly, he roared, You bastard. Did you enjoy watching me make a fool of myself? He suddenly jumped up, and ferociously kicked Dong Wushang to the ground. Then, he pounced on Dong Wushang like a tiger, and rode on his body. Then, he gnashed his teeth, and rained down his fist. Dong Wushang didn't dare to fight back. He gritted his teeth, and took the beating. He didn't make a sound. Dong Wushang's anger would have subsided if he had begged for mercy. But, the problem was, what kind of person was Dong Wushang? This guy was definitely a super ruthless person who wouldn't even let out a moan when he was smashed to death bone by bone. So, how could he possibly cry out? Not only did he not cry out, but he was also comforting himself in his heart. Elder brother's anger will be appeased if he beats a mortal. Isn't it just getting beaten by a mortal? I can hold on. However, he didn't know that the more he didn't cry out, the angrier Dong Wushang got. The angrier he got, the more he got beaten. Dong Wushang didn't make a sound even after Dong Wushang had beaten him for a long time. I'll beat you to death, you tough bone." Dong Wushang's eyes turned green with anger. He ferociously kicked him. This younger brother of his had been like this since childhood. He was naughty, but he didn't admit his mistake. He didn't make a sound no matter how much you beat him. He wouldn't say a word even if you beat him to death. "I was wrong." Such a child could really make an adult anxious and angry. Cough cough. This point, those who have children at home should understand it very well. Dong Wushang's eyes suddenly turned red as he continued to beat him. He recalled that he had been so desperate and regretful that he wished he could commit suicide. Then, he suddenly sat down on the ground and burst into tears. "You bastard. You don't know that you scared me to death just now. How would I explain it to my parents if something had happened to you, stupid pig? You're such a stupid pig." Dong Wu Lei was scared out of his wits when he saw Dong Wushang. "I wrote this last paragraph 3 times, but I wasn't satisfied. So, I simply didn't describe it, and wrote it out plainly. Everyone can experience it for themselves. I've added 1 more chapter today. Counting last month's, there are 3 chapters today. I'll continue to write. I may not be able to write another chapter before midnight. But, I'll need a monthly ticket if I can write another chapter. Well, I'll escape to write, and I'll need to double the time. Please do your best to support me. It'll be difficult to catch up after these 7 days. Of course, it'll be difficult for others to catch up if the distance between us is too big." Chapter 635. Dong Wushang and Dong Wu Lei were leading their horses on the road. They were talking as they walked. Both of them were feeling relaxed and happy. They hadn't felt this way for many years. The remaining experts were following behind them. Their lips were blue, and their faces were pale. They were trembling with fear. Unexpectedly, the 2 brothers didn't mention this person. They didn't say anything about how to deal with him. They didn't even talk to him. They just left him hanging. Someone wanted to say something, but he was embarrassed. He was nervous. This road was extremely torturous. Dong Wu Lei's eyes were still red. He would massage his eyes whenever he was free. Moreover, he would do it stealthily every time. He was very secretive. He was extremely embarrassed. Damn it, the old man actually cried out loud in front of everyone in the hall. His reputation was more or less ruined. Dong Wu Lei was at a loss. This is too shameful. Young Clan Lord Dong recalled how he had stretched out his legs and cried. He wished he could dig a hole in the ground and drill his head into it. "I've been possessed. Isn't it better if this stupid pig dies? Why would I be sad? Motherfucker." Dong Wushang wasn't an insensible person. Dong Wushang would come forward and greet Dong Wu Lei every time he rubbed his eyes. He would have an honest look on his face. "Big brother, are your eyes still uncomfortable?" "Sigh, I'm very touched." "You, Sigh, you're crying. This is the first time I've seen you cry since you were a child." Dong Wu Lei would be too ashamed to show his face every time this happened. "This bastard, can't you see that I'm rubbing my eyes secretly? You're still coming forward to console me. Console my ass." Dong Wu Lei finally couldn't help but explode when Dong Wu Lei rubbed his eyes for the 8th time, and Dong Wushang cautiously came forward to console him for the 8th time. Dong Wushang was beaten into a pig's head in no time. He scolded as he beat him. "How did that stupid pig king of Hell Chu teach you? How did such a smart person become brothers with a stupid pig like you? You follow such a smart person every day. Didn't you learn some fucking tricks? You don't even have a little bit of understanding." Laugh. Try laughing again. I can't kill you, Dong Wushang covered his head while being beaten. His eyes were full of grievances. "What's wrong? Fucker, you don't know what's good for you. Even when Jiu Duxing and the others were suffering, I rarely comforted them. Isn't this because you're my big brother? Why? Is it wrong to be concerned about you?" The more Dong Wushang thought about it, the more aggrieved he felt. "I gave you an honor that no one else could enjoy, and you actually hit me? Unable to bear it, there was no need to bear it any longer. Who could tolerate this? Uncle can tolerate it, but Prudence can't. Let me go. Poof. Pu. Let me go. Pu. You're still not done yet. Dong Wushang finally lost his temper. He flipped over and launched punches and kicks at the same time, brazenly resisting. After this battle, the two brothers' faces were bruised and swollen. They lay on the ground and cried out. Dong Wu Lei didn't need to worry about the rims of his eyes turning red because they had already turned blue. After a long time, he said, Wushang, I think today's matter is a little strange. Weird. Yes. It was too strange. Why should Hei Mo let us go? Dong Wu Lei held a blade of grass in his swollen mouth like a pig's. He then started to ponder. That's true. I also feel that the Hei Mo today is a little abnormal. Dong Wushang's expression was a little strange. He blinked his eyes. One of them had black eyes, and the other had blue eyes. The best outcome for you and me brothers would have been to perish together if we had fought today. Or, we wouldn't have been able to do it. Dong Wu Lei deliberated. It could be said that he had the deepest understanding of Dong Wushang. Because I've come, and I've become a burden to you. You wouldn't have escaped if I hadn't escaped. So, the final result would have been that everyone would have fought with their lives on the line, but they had a lot of people. Their emperor-level experts weren't as sharp as your saber emperor. But 7 of them were far above you. You would have undoubtedly died if they had been willing to pay the price to fight you. The Dong clan would have collapsed if both of us had died. So, why did he give up at the most critical moment? Dong Wu Lei said. As for what he said about Saber Emperor comes out, and the world cries, that's nonsense. Could it be that Saber Monarch also cries? Saber Saint also cries? Could it be that he has some purpose? Dong Wushang sat up and pondered, or, does he have some intention? Nonsense. What intention could the Black Devil have towards us? He wouldn't have any intention towards a hostile force like our Dong clan even if he had gone mad, Dong Wu Lei said in distress, but there must be a reason. And, I'm afraid this reason isn't small. That's right. Dong Wushang touched his chin. He shouldn't have wanted me to owe him a favor, right? Dong Wu Lei was speechless. He rolled his eyes and said, do you think you're a supreme-level expert? Supreme-level expert? I'm afraid it'll take a few years. Dong Wushang honestly replied, at least a few decades. Fuck. Dong Wu Lei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He spat out a mouthful of saliva. Then, he looked up and heaved a long sigh. I realized that I was afraid of you in the past. It was an unforgivable mistake. Can't you use your brain a little? Dong Wushang said as if it was a matter of course. Why would I need to use my brain when I'm with you? Dong Wu Lei was startled. Dong Wushang's ordinary words had revealed his unparalleled trust in his elder brother. Moreover, this trust had become a matter of habit. Why would I need to use my brain when I'm with you? Dong Wu Lei couldn't help but feel a little sour in his nose. He couldn't help but slap him. Don't be sentimental here. Sentimental? Dong Wushang caressed the back of his head. Then, he disdainfully said, you're sick. Dong Wu Lei was furious. A long time passed before he said, you must be more careful when you meet the Black Devil in the future. I feel that this matter isn't so simple. Dong Wushang nodded in agreement. He thought in his heart, not simple. Could it be that it's very perverted? Both of them got up from the ground. They were about to return to the clan. So, they were somewhat silent. I'll leave the clan in the future. Dong Wushang was silent for a long time. Then, he finally opened his mouth and looked at his elder brother with sincerity. Dong Wu Lei's body suddenly shook. A mountain can't accommodate 2 tigers. I am not suitable to stay in the clan. You and I can't fight. But, there are many people in our clan who have ulterior motives or groundless fears. Dong Wushang racked his brain and pondered. Then, he said, Elder Dan, the consecrated elders, and the elders think that my aptitude surpasses yours. So, you, I, and my father can't resist if they want to launch a coup. Dong Wu Lei silently lowered his head and walked forward. He was caught in a dilemma in his heart. He couldn't bear to let his younger brother leave. But, he also didn't want his younger brother to stay at home. As for this person, forget about it. Dong Wushang smiled, you don't need to care about sister-in-law. After all Almost all the elites of the Yu clan were wiped out this time. They did it to deal with me. But they did it for you. Dong Wushong coldly snorted and said, "How can there be such an easy thing?" The contradiction and affection in his eyes suddenly changed into coldness and ruthlessness when he talked about this matter. The ambitious and ruthless side of Dong Wu Lei was finally revealed in front of him. "Think more for your nephew," Dong Wushong said. Dong Wu Lei snorted. Both of them returned home while they were talking. The remaining experts obediently went to the discipline hall under Dong Wu Lei's command. They had almost lost half of their lives. But they didn't dare to say a word. Dong Qigong's worried face revealed a relieved smile when he saw the two brothers return together. Then, he saw that the two brothers had bruised noses and swollen faces. So, he anxiously asked what happened. "He hit me." Dong Wushong pointed at Dong Wu Lei. "He also hit me." Dong Wu Lei snorted. Dong Qigong laughed heartily. The worry in his heart was finally gone. Dong clan held a big banquet that night. Everyone drank to their heart's content. Dong Wu Lei hurried over halfway through the banquet. His complexion was gloomy. Dong Wushong didn't ask what his elder brother had done to sister-in-law. Dong Wu Lei also didn't say anything. The two brothers had a tacit understanding. "I feel that I have to explain something here. Because I can't make up my mind. This Yu Xiu, what should I do? So, I have to be vague about it. It's not that I'm lazy." The next day, the Dong clan gathered their troops and prepared to go to war. Dong Wu Lei and Dong Wushong would naturally lead the expedition team. They would take a detour on this road. They wouldn't go through the Breaking Soul Cliff. Instead, they would go through the Double Sun Pass. They would pass through the Shuangyang Mountain Pass and arrive at the Jiyu clan's territory. They would meet with Jiyu Duxing. Then, they would lead the troops north and join forces with the Mo clan. The decisive battle that would take place in 3 days was finally about to begin. Dong Wushong and his father had a long talk that night. Dong Qigong also sighed for half the night. But he still reluctantly agreed in the end. Dong Wushong knelt in front of the clan's gate and kowtowed before the expedition. Then, he turned around, mounted his horse, and left. The group of people arrived at the Shuangyang Mountain Pass. There was a dense forest on both sides of the group. Dong Wushong was walking at the front. But he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He turned his head to look, and saw a black light flying out of the forest on the left side. It went straight for Dong Wushong. Dong Wushong snorted. He stretched out his hand, and caught this black light. It was a black feather arrow. Dong Wushong's body had already flown out from the horse's back when he had caught the arrow. His black saber turned into a black light. He and his saber merged, and entered the dense forest in a flash. Dong Wushong rushed out 400 feet in the dense forest with a sure sound. But he didn't find anything. He was puzzled in his heart. But he suddenly saw some swaying grass from the corner of his eyes. So, he roared and pounced over. A black-clothed figure flew out from the grass with a rustling sound. Her body flashed, and she was already more than 100 feet away. Dong Wushong couldn't help but be stunned. This person had a slim figure. Her movements were like a weak willow swaying with the wind. Her speed was fast, but her movements were graceful and calm. She should be a young girl. How can a girl suddenly appear in such a place? Dong Wushong was stunned for a moment. Then, he continued to chase. The girl's movements were nimble, and her speed was also very fast. But her cultivation was obviously far inferior to Dong Wushong's. That black-clothed girl was angry and anxious when she saw Dong Wushong chasing after her. She turned her head and shouted coldly, "I came to deliver you a message out of goodwill. Why are you chasing after me as if I'm your enemy? You're really a hothead." To be continued. Chapter 636. Dong Wushong was startled. He couldn't help but stop. That girl seemed to be relieved. She stretched her body, and disappeared without a trace. Dong Wushong could only vaguely make out a pair of sparkling eyes under the veil of the young girl's veil when she turned her head, sparkling like the cold stars in the sky. He stopped thoughtfully and looked at the black arrow in his hand. He saw a note tied to it. Ao Qingyun, Ao Fengyun, led a group of people to threaten the Jiyu clan. Just a few words. Dong Wushong's body shook. He rushed back like a whirlwind. Wushong, who is it? Dong Wulei looked at Dong Wushong. I don't know. Dong Wushong mounted his horse. Big brother, something happened to the Jiyu clan. I have to go first. You lead the army and speed up. His voice hadn't faded when he clamped his legs on the horse's belly. The horse neighed and rushed out. Dong Wulei reacted instantly. He reached out and pulled the king-level expert down from the horse's back. He patted the horses but with his right hand, and another horse rushed out. Bring another horse. Okay. Dong Wushong's voice was already very far away. Speed up. Dong Wulei took a deep breath. He looked at his younger brother's departing figure and waved his hand. The army also quickened their pace. The Jiyu clan and the Dong clan were now in an alliance. If the Ao clan took over the Jiyu clan, it would be very bad. Mo clan. Mo Tianji walked into the study. The latest news is that the Dong clan brothers have reconciled. Dong Wushong returned to the clan safe and sound. The Black Devil returned without success. Mo Tianji's voice clearly relaxed. King of Hell Chu had been asking for news every day for the past few days. Mo Tianji had a nervous reflex. His heart jumped when he saw King of Hell Chu. Chu Yang's face relaxed. He let out a long breath. He knew that Dong Wushong had finally overcome the first obstacle in his life. Psychological obstacle. Among the brothers, Dong Wushong was the one with the biggest crisis. The Black Devil was famous for being strange and vicious. There was also Dong Wulei, who had ulterior motives. Dong Wushong was an emotional person. He was heroic and unparalleled. Such a person wouldn't be easily hurt. But if he was hurt by his family, he would never be able to turn over a new leaf. In his previous life, Dong Wushong had cultivated Merciless Saber. Although Merciless Blade was ruthless, it still went to the extreme. In his previous life, their relationship had deteriorated until many years later, when the two brothers finally fought. At that time, things were already out of control. But in this life, things were finally better. I'm going all out. It could be seen that it wasn't a bad thing to do some things in advance. Are you finally relieved? Mo Tianji finally dared to sit down in front of King of Hell Chu. King of Hell Chu would come to the study room every morning to wait for news. Mo Tianji would feel restless whenever King of Hell Chu arrived. Originally, this study was Mo Tianji's favorite place to stay. It gave him a wonderful feeling of strategizing and controlling the whole world. However, Mo Tianji felt tormented sitting next to King of Hell Chu ever since King of Hell Chu had taken over his place. This guy was like a bomb that could explode at any time. This caused the master of calculation and manipulation, who caused the entire three heavens to tremble in fear, to become restless, as if there was a sore growing under his butt. Now, he could finally sit down peacefully. What do you mean you're finally relieved? Chu Yong rolled his eyes. Then, he sprawled out on the armchair and said, I've never been worried, okay? You're the only one who's worrying about other people's business. Mo Tianji almost spat out his saliva. His finger trembled as he pointed at Chu Yang. Do you have a conscience to say these words? Let's talk business. Chu Yang lazily picked his ear. You can go out if there's nothing else. I'm going to sleep. Mo Tianji was furious. Is this my home or your home? Get up. Of course, there's something important. Mo Tianji said sullenly, otherwise, do you think I'm here to see your stinky face? The first thing is that the Dong brothers are leading people to the Jiyu clan. It seems that they're coming here after meeting up with the Jiyu clan, Mo Tianji said. Oh. Chu Yang closed his eyes. Mo Tianji clenched his teeth. The second thing is that Ao clans Ao Fengyun and Ao Qingyun are suppressing the Jiyu clan. Oh. Chu Yang's eyebrows didn't move. You're not worried? Mo Tianji was surprised. Are you worried? Chu Yang asked back. I'm also not worried. Mo Tianji forced a smile. I've underestimated King of Hell Chu's wisdom. I reckon that King of Hell Chu might as well fart if he were to hear this. He might even cover his nose if someone farted. AO clan might dare to assassinate Jiyu Duxing. But that genius wouldn't dare to brazenly exterminate the Jiyu clan in front of so many people even if he was a fool. Jiyu Duxing isn't just a single person. He has the Jiyu clan, Dong clan, Luo clan, Mo clan, Xie clan, and Ji clan behind him. There's also the Heavenly Armament Pavilion that's giving everyone a headache. AO clan only has AO Qing Yun and AO Feng Yun. So, they don't have the guts to stir up such a hornet's nest. Moreover, it's at such a sensitive time. They're not forcing them too hard. So, they'll just treat it as a farce. But, I reckon that these two won't be able to return to the AO clan if they force them too hard. Chu Yang lazily said, in addition, they'd better withdraw quickly. Dong Wushong is rushing over there right now. These two geniuses will still be there when Dong Wushong arrives at Jiyu Duxing's place. So, these two geniuses of the AO clan don't have the slightest hope of survival. The only result is that they'll become two piles of dung, Chu Yang concluded. Could it be that Jiyu Duxing dares to kill them? Mo Tianji glared. Is it strange to kill them? Chu Yang looked at Mo Tianji in astonishment. Master of calculation and manipulation, can't someone from the AO clan die? Let's not talk about killing these two geniuses in the current situation of the Jianghu. Would the AO clan dare to fart even if I killed all of them? If they dare to fart, I'll catch a pack of male wolves and feed them aphrodisiac. Then, I'll strip AO Xie Yun naked and throw him inside. Then, I'll call all the big clans of the upper three heavens to visit. Mo Tianji quivered and shivered. You're so vicious. He sighed and said, speaking of which, we have a problem here. You shouldn't have saved AO Xie Yun. Wouldn't it have been better if he had died? The reason why the AO clan let them out was because of AO Xie Yun's death. They wanted them to come out and perform meritorious deeds. They also wanted to choose a successor to replace AO Xie Yun for revenge. Their target was the Black Devil and the others. There's no doubt about this. But they just started to act when they received news that AO Xie Yun wasn't dead. Mo Tianji sighed, isn't that crazy? Since AO Xie Yun isn't dead, it means that they don't have a chance. Since they don't have a chance, but they're in a place where they have a chance. How can they not do something earth-shattering? Surpass AO Xie Yun? What kind of big thing can be important? It's just unifying the Jianghu. Or, finding a few young experts for the AO clan who can reach the monarch level and saint level to increase the chances of the AO clan entering the upper three heavens. Only then can they replace AO Xie Yun, right? At this time, your Heavenly Armament Pavilion came out of nowhere. Every one of you is a genius with a bright future. You tell me, if they don't make a move on you, who else can they make a move on? Mo Tianji got angry as he spoke. You bastard. You're a shit stirrer. What do you mean by your Heavenly Armament Pavilion? Chu Yang said unhappily, it should be our Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Our Heavenly Armament Pavilion? Mo Tianji was shocked. Yes, I declare that you, Mo Tianji, are the military counselor of our Heavenly Armament Pavilion from today onwards, Chu Yang said proudly. I won't do it. Mo Tianji said angrily. He almost vomited blood. How did he become a subordinate in the blink of an eye? Objection overruled. Minister Chu said majestically, I declare that your application is approved. Mo Tianji was so angry that he laughed. He was just talking about his faults when this guy started to pester him endlessly. Let's talk about these things first. Mo Tianji said angrily. What's the use of saying these things? Chu Yang rolled his eyes. The problem now is that these things have already happened. What we're discussing now is how to solve it and how to deal with it. What's the use of saying these things besides making me feel uncomfortable? Mo Tianji was startled. He was used to finding out the cause and effect of everything. Hearing Chu Yang say this, he suddenly remembered that it might be useful to find out the cause of other things, but this matter was indeed useless. As for how to deal with it, I've already planned it out. Mo Tianji snorted and said, I'm just waiting for Jiyu Duxing to return home and Dong Wushong's matter to be over. Now, I'm basically done with my preparations.
Oh.
What about Luo Ku Di and Jimo? Chu Yang asked. Those two are not important. Mo Tianji said, they'll follow you. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and said angrily, but Luo Ku Di is missing. He hasn't been found yet. He'll be fine. Mo Tianji said, Luo Ku Wu doesn't see him as a competitor. No matter how high his cultivation is, he won't kill his brothers. What are you afraid of? Do you think that someone like Luo Ku Di can be the clan master? Do you want him to squat on the clan master's seat and whine every day? Chu Yang was dumbfounded. He was stupefied. And Jimo? That guy can't even escape. Before the Ji clan master's seat is passed down, he won't go back. What's the use of looking for him? Mo Tianji snorted, that lecher, I don't know if he's crawled out of his wife's belly yet. These words are very reasonable. Minister Chu rubbed his chin as he muttered to himself. He felt that Mo Tianji's words were very reasonable. Actually, I think that Huyanao Bo would be a perfect match for Dong Wushong or Li Xiong too. Both of them are big and strong. I didn't expect that she would take a fancy to Jimo. It's really. Mo Tianji racked his brains and thought for a while. Then, he shook his head and said, chopsticks with toothpicks, celery with bean sprouts. And this bean sprouts is a man. The plan had been completed. Everything had been arranged properly. So, Mo Tianji could not help but become gossipy as he relaxed. Chopsticks with toothpicks, celery with bean sprouts. Hearing these words, Chu Yang immediately choked and coughed repeatedly. To be continued. Chapter 637. Then, Mo Tianji began to issue orders one by one. Countless invisible falcons flew out one after another like bamboo shoots after the rain. Block the trade routes. Block the waterways. Block the mines. Block. Mo Tianji had formulated different countermeasures for the first 3 areas of each clan, and each clan's strength. Every one of them was enough to make one's hair stand on end. Even Chu Yang, who was watching from the sidelines, felt somewhat alarmed. Mo Tianji would shout every time he finished writing, someone come in. Then, someone would come in and take the order. Then, he would go out and release the 5 elements falcons according to Mo Tianji's instructions. Mo Tianji had sent more than 40 orders to the Jiyu clan, Xie clan, Dong clan, and other allied clans within 2 hours. Moreover, the small clans that depended on these allied clans for survival. Then, it was the Mo clan's own arrangement. Mo Tianji had casually made arrangements. He had issued 10 orders within an hour. Each of them was aimed at the vital points. Moreover, they were ordinary means plus abnormal means. They included vicious means, despicable means, shameless means. In short, Mo Tianji was unscrupulous this time. He was unscrupulous. He was unscrupulous. He was determined to ravage the enemy clans physically. He was determined to rape the enemy clans spiritually. He was determined to rape the enemy clans financially. He was determined to rape the enemy clans morally. He was determined to make the enemy clans impregnate and then miscarry them. He was using vicious, despicable, shameless, wretched, upper-class and low-class methods. And, he was using them in the name of righteousness. This was simply too awesome. It was awesome to the point of infinity. Finally, Mo Tianji had written a declaration to the world. It was as follows: I respectfully inform the people of Jianghu of the 3 heavens. Today, the wind and clouds have changed strangely. Bloody rain and foul wind have emerged in an endless stream. First, dozens of clans have been exterminated. Their young daughters have gone missing. Then, countless young beggars have gone missing. Mo clan, Xie clan, Dong clan, Ji clan, and Jiyu clan have joined forces to investigate. And, we have finally found something. It was the Meng clan's evil plan. They wanted to practice evil techniques and dominate Jianghu. But, the Meng clan was suddenly exterminated when the investigation was nearing its end. And, the culprits turned out to be the Meng clan's allies, several big clans. The more he tried to cover it up, the more conspicuous it was. The Black Devil clan, the Tu clan, the Ou clan, the Tian clan, and the other clans had already obtained the cultivation method of the Meng clan. Moreover, They had slaughtered the Meng clan. These clans would probably ravage the entire world within a few years given their financial and material resources and manpower. His ambition was clear as day. Even if all the powers of the three heavens combined, they still wouldn't be able to contend against him. Evil and poisonous arts brought disaster to the world. There was no need to hide the great danger. We are all carefree and happy Jianghu people. How can we be slaves? Here, we will fight to the death to protect the laws of the martial world. The hot blood of martial artist. Martial artists of our generation would rather die standing than live kneeling. It was better to be a broken piece of jade than an intact tile. On the 10th day of the 10th month, by the Lake of Despair, there would be a battle to the death. Let's see who would be the one to die. Mo Tianji finally finished writing. He blew on the ink and said with a smile, "This can only be done after the letter of challenge is sent out and the other party accepts it." There was no hurry. However, this duke is angry today, so I'll use this mood to write and prepare. Chu Yang's hair stood on end. Mo Tianji was really, Chu Yang was speechless. Mo Tianji first launched an attack on those clans. Moreover, it was an all-around attack. Then, when the other party couldn't bear it anymore, he sent out the letter of challenge. At that time, those clans would have been furious and would have fought without hesitation. Then, they would have realized that the moment they agreed, Mo Tianji had already sent out a declaration for the entire three heavens. Ring after ring, interlocking. Then, they would pounce on the enemy clans like a storm. As long as we can hold on until the final battle, we will win. Mo Tianji smiled and said, "At that time, even if the upper three heavens send reinforcements, it would be useless." Lake of Despair? Chu Yang was suddenly moved and exclaimed. Lake of Despair, wasn't that where the fourth fragment of the Calamity Sword was located? Mo Tianji actually chose to fight there. Mo Tianji finally finished his arrangements. He let out a long sigh and pondered. Apparently, he had gone through his plan in his mind. After confirming that there were no mistakes, he said, "Brother Chu, do you have any suggestions for my arrangements?" "No." Chu Yang said sincerely, "Your arrangements this time are perfect." It was indeed very beautiful. In the past, Mo Tianji's arrangements tended to neglect one thing, human nature, but now, Mo Tianji made such arrangements based on the life experiences and personalities of the leaders of the clans. It could be said that every move not only attacked the lifelines of the clans, but also the weaknesses of the leaders of the clans. In fact, Mo Tianji had even made such arrangements for each and every merchant. Every move was perfect and impeccable. "Brother Mo, you are gradually becoming more mature," Chu Yang said quietly. "Yes, from the looks of this plan, it was completely the work of the master of calculation and manipulation from his previous life. Brother Chu, you have contributed greatly to this." Mo Tianji smiled and said, "A few days ago, you told me that I didn't pay attention to human nature when making plans. This reminded me. In the past, when I made plans, I only considered the final benefits and strength of the clans, or schemes. In short, I didn't consider human nature. You don't know that these days, I have been thinking about human nature all night long." He sent out a pensive look. Chu Yang also became serious. This topic was very vague, but it was the key to Mo Tianji's transformation. Later, I finally figured it out. Human nature is the weakness of a person's character. Mo Tianji smiled and said, "No matter if it is a good person or a bad person, there is a weakness in their character. And this weakness is formed when they are young. So, after investigating a person and understanding their life experiences, combined with their current behavior, it is easy to find the weakness of their character." Chu Yang was dumbfounded. "Fuck, what is this saying? Human nature is the weakness of a person's character? This is the first time I have heard of such a theory. It is too fucking creative. So, I am making plans now to deliberately target this point. I almost investigated the life of every person we are going to deal with and analyzed them. Then, I found their human nature." Mo Tianji was a little proud. "Then, I found out that the success rate of such a plan is 100%. Brother Chu, you are really a good teacher and helpful friend. Your words have awakened me. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.